joke about the libertarian aspect of how Bitcoin was one of my payment processors for a business I was running when I was a youngster.
Awesome.
Um, I was selling game servers, and one of my payment processors I was using was BitPay, and that was spectacular. Looking back, I don't think BitPay would take a 17-year-old client, but they did then, or I fudged my age and they didn't check. I can't remember. Um, but as time went on, I had this computer repair shop where I was fixing people's computers, and I was working multiple jobs, and I was just like I didn't know what I was going to do, as I grew up, and I got on Newegg and I bought a whole bunch of GPUs to mine, at the time, shitcoins, because 2015, 2016, what made sense was to mine shitcoins.
Yes.
Um,
Okay.
and then you traded it to Bitcoin, the hard money.
Were you
Um,
trading like mining? Sorry, like Litecoin, things like that.
yeah, I was mining Dash, or back then
Oh
they
yeah.
called it X11 or Dark Coin. Um, and, it had some interesting promises that didn't ever pan out, of course. And Litecoin and Dogecoin and so on. Of course, Dogecoin didn't have anywhere near the notoriety it has today, but even so, it's still stupid. Uh, but I was doing that, back then, and I think I still have some of those GPUs somewhere in my garage. Um, and I had a friend of mine who saw what I was doing. He saw that I was like completely loading up 400 amps of power in my computer repair shop. And he said to me, "Well, why don't we just go start a business where we host those more high-powered ASICs for other people? The S7s and the S9s." And so, here I am, like 19 or 20, and we're thinking, okay, we're going to go rent this building for like thousands of dollars a month, which is not tangible to us. And we're going to go get all these pre-orders of these customers. At the end of the day, we had a business that lasted like 8 months. Um, it was called Minery Tech Solutions. We had some outside investors, and we tried real hard to do good by everybody, but I don't think we did. And I think this is the case with a lot of mining hosting companies, is they end up upsetting somebody that's paying them, whether it's an investor or the customer or even the power company or somebody.
Shout out
Um,
Compass.
and it's difficult because like I have so much inside perspective on that, and I don't want to throw anybody under the bus for
That's
anything
fine.
specific.
I'm just
Uh,
being. I'm making jokes, man. I'm sorry.
no, not even about them, but just like everybody. Like almost every single hosting company will face like some of the same challenges, and ultimately we weren't equipped for it. We didn't have deep pockets. We were a bunch of young kids, and we made a lot of mistakes looking back. And there's a lot of it I wouldn't do the way I did it, and ultimately I wouldn't do it again. Period. Just because it's too much. It's too much to try to wrap my head around and do it reliably. We were hosting about 1,500 different machines. They were S9s and the Obelisk SC1 and the A3 from Bitmain and so on, and the L3 from Bitmain. And we were like a megawatt and a half of power at our peak. And this was like an enormous task to manage. And I see these super farms today that are like, they're like, hundreds of megawatts. And I'm thinking, holy cow, I couldn't manage 2 megawatts at all.
But I
It was
mean, you're a
bad.
young kid at the time, and what an enormous
Yeah,
learning curve
and,
too.
and to my credit, the machines are a little better now.
Right.
Um, while the S9 was very reliable for the years that it followed, the the actual equipment that was being shipped at the time was behind schedule, overpriced, and upmarket. I mean, all the parameters were set up for failure in hindsight. And what I know now, I've experienced almost, depending on how you count it, like three, maybe four cycles of this up and down action with the price action of Bitcoin. Um, and what I've learned is you want to buy consistently, not at the top, not at the bottom. I'm talking about hardware specifically. You want to buy consistently on a schedule regardless of profitability, or not regardless of profitability on your operation, but like you shouldn't take into account that if you make a purchase now, it should ROI in like air quote ROI in like 3 months versus 36 months. You should just assume that there's like a median or average of like what you're shooting for and just keep purchasing. Because trying to time the market, you either have to be an expert or an idiot. And most of us are idiots. At least I am. So I don't see how you're going to time the market perfectly. It makes much more sense to just buy consistently. Because versus the dollar, when you're mining, you're really just leveraging the opportunity to purchase power and using your power purchase as a method to purchase Bitcoin at a discount if you're lucky most
Yeah.
of the time.
And so we're pretty lucky now. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. Just the ability to buy better money for shitty money is pretty amazing, right?
Yeah, I mean, like previously in the last market, when the government shut down everything, like for COVID, things were really interesting. Prices all skyrocketed up. Not only did like the price of the equipment skyrocket, but the price of Bitcoin skyrocketed. And this is kind of something that I've been going over with my clients lately, which is the the price of the price of the equipment seems to be loosely tied to the price of the cost of Bitcoin. So, if the network difficulty seems to go up exponentially, you can imagine that the price on the miner would be stagnant or even depreciate over time or
Uh-huh.
deflate over time. Um, but the inverse happened for COVID. We had the price of Bitcoin went up, the difficulty stayed flat, um, and the price of the machines went up not only because the demand went up because the price went up, but also because we couldn't get them in. So it created this like weird dynamic where everything went up like 2, 3, 4x like overnight. Um, and I remember when I was working at Kaboom Racks after we had closed down Minery to try to get back onto a timeline here. I was at Minery, and then when I was at Kaboom Racks afterwards, um, I was Kaboom Racks' first hire. Robert hired me, and we went to build on their network and their channels and their relationships with their vendors and customers um, quite extensively. And at that time, I mean, it was absolutely just like mania. We were working 16-hour days just trying to reply to people.
Yeah, wow.
And you, I wish I had that level of work today because I remember what we were doing and we were just getting so much done and that there's nobody that could do it. There was nobody that could get a hold of it. And I will say in today's economy of minor reselling, which is still what I'm doing, um, we're not seeing the level of inbounds that I remember during the last bull market. And so, we joked that maybe right now is the bull market, and I hope this isn't the only bull market, because it's definitely not the bull market for the price per terahash um, versus the difficulty on the network, because the difficulty on the network has been a steady staircase upwards for there's been a couple of times that we've stepped down, but mostly we've been just up for years now, consistently up in difficulty for years.
Mm-hmm.
And it does make it difficult to even maintain a piece of equipment that's relevant for enough years for it to pay for itself. And
Yeah,
I
wow.
think I think there was a lot of people that jumped into mining when they bought an $8,000 S19J Pro. And to this day, they may not have made back that $8,000. Um, Uptime is key. If they had downtime, there's a huge chance that they didn't make anywhere near that amount of money. But
Wow.
on the flip side of that, there is lesser equipment out there that people definitely did purchase, and all they had to do was keep it plugged in, and they've probably 2 or 3x their value, even denominated in Bitcoin. There's a handful of case studies that are super valuable where a customer got way ahead. Um, and you don't know if it's luck, if it's expertise, or what. But It's I remember I remember the time of like when we would get thousands of messages a day.
Yeah,
Um, and that's definitely not today.
you just
But I look
inundated.
forward to it. I'm trying to be prepared for it.
Well, what goes around comes around. I can remember that's interesting insight about the S19s because there was a minute there where I was actively talking to the old man who runs solar and batteries and things on the top of his house, and he asked me, like, could we set some Bitcoin miners up, maybe one or two, just to run in the downtime or whatever, and just to sort of flatten the even out the load, dude. I have this is way over my head, but I'm liberal arts, bro. Anyway, my point is that I looked into it and I asked a fella who's local here, Piers, cool, and he's super helpful. You can just flick him a message and he'll, like any Bitcoiner really, share his information. And so I told him to set up. He's from MineRacks, and he was like, "Yeah, I mean, you could, but it's probably not going to be profitable." He did some back of the napkin kind of math and recognized that it probably wasn't going to be the best way to go about things. Um, but at the time I thought, sure, why not? KYC, free sats, all that sort of stuff, and the margins in this thing is just so extremely. Or sorry, the profits in this thing, like everything's so damn marginal in mining, right?
Yeah, very thin, very
Yeah,
thin.
yeah,
Um, you would, especially the last few years, I would advise against solar and mining most of the time. Um, there's going to be a handful of people that would tell me I'm a moron for saying that. And there's a couple exceptions that make sense. And I would love to be associated with one of those exceptions. Um, those exceptions are like if you're mining and somebody else paid for your panels. If you're,
uh-huh,
because then your cost of power is significantly lower. So if you have a government entity, you have some nonsense mechanism to make somebody else pay for your power, you're always going to win. There's no way to lose. If you're handy and you can fix your own equipment. You can buy secondhand equipment, both secondhand solar, and secondhand miners. There is enough margin in there to make money on that scenario as well. Um, then there's like there's the case for it being off grid or being undocumented. More and more, I'm attracted to this idea of running brand new equipment, full price equipment, $10,000 miners on solar in a few exceptions. And some of those exceptions are like, I don't want to pay for the infrastructure to get the equipment there.
right.
Um, and there's those types of scenarios where you're looking at the cost of the panel is less than the cost of the transformers and the having a utility bring you electricity. And those are going to be rural, sunny areas. Think like it's not where I'm at, but think like a rural Arizona or like New Mexico or something along those lines. It could make sense. But there's also like, the guys in Texas, they're playing their gambling casino with ERCOT, where their prices are going up and down all the time. They don't really know what the price is going to be tomorrow.
Mhm.
Um, those guys are really just taking advantage of like a quick market, right? They can get in, they can use all the power. When they realize it's completely unsustainable from a business case, they just turn it off.
Right.
Um, and that's also okay. Like Bitcoin miners and Bitcoin itself is going to find all the efficiencies and wasted power. Like it's out there. Um, and so, those types of examples do make sense. And the cost of solar has come down a lot in recent history compared to 5 years ago. You could buy those same what used to be a $10,000 miner or a $8,000 miner and plug it in today on solar and have a much greater chance of it actually paying for itself over the next 12 months versus the 3 years it would have taken then at those prices with those solar panels that you had access to then.
Uh-huh.
Um, but a current generation machine, it probably doesn't make sense to turn it off for 16 hours a day. It You probably want it online every second that you have possession of it. Um, And that's something I really like as a seller of equipment and a reseller of equipment. I'm probably the weirdest guy to tell you no, don't send me money. Um, I've told my customers many times, like, don't don't buy the equipment until you're ready to plug it in, because the price is going to change, and it might change down, and you're really going to kick yourself if you buy it too early. Um, New equipment could come out, or you could find out that the equipment that you're going to buy was a lemon and it was going to break 6 months after you bought it. The only way you can have that kind of hindsight is by being, absolutely sure you're ready to plug it in the hour that you buy it.
Right. Okay.
Um, and then there's the other side of that argument is if you want to hedge your bets, okay, buy some percentage of it, right? Like, you really want to waste your money, only waste half of it. It's strange to have that conversation with the customer where you're saying, don't send me money. That's a bad idea. Because you're not supposed to really, like, imagine if you go to a car dealership and the guy's like, this car's too fast for you. You don't want it. Like, that's what I have to do to my customers. This one uses too much gas. It may not fit your lifestyle. Like, you don't want to be at the gas station every day.
I think
Um,
there's a certain level. There's definitely a certain level of authenticity and genuineness that actually helps in that situation. I would prefer the car salesman to tell me that. And the real estate agent and the Bitcoin miner salesperson as well, because
yeah, my real estate agent did not tell me how many of my appliances that were brand new were going to break in 5 years. I had no idea. or or all the problems I've had with my doors and my and my roof. Um, those types of problems, had no idea, and I'm sure they did, and they didn't say a thing.
yeah, yeah,
It's strange to me because as a consumer, like, I'm probably not going to call back that real estate agent, and you may not go back to that car dealership that sells you the car that doesn't have airbags. Uh, Once you find out. Um,
well,
but
yeah,
But if you survive, you're not going to blow your brains out over losing 10 grand. If you survive a downturn in a market, I want my customer to come back to me. I plan to be here in
there you
five
go,
years.
there you go.
And I hope that they remember my advice, whether they followed it or not. I hope they remember that I told them what I believed at the time to be the best outcome for them.
Low time preference. Nick's playing the long game. I love it. I want to quickly go back to like when you were first emailing your buddy, and I mean, we kind of were you ever? It seems like you gravitated immediately to the tech side of things and mining in particular. Obviously, you've got a keen interest in computing, potentially networking, all of the things that go in and around. I guess the hardware side of things. Is that true to say?
Yeah. So I was a rambunctious kid. Um, and my high school solution for that was to get me out of the school as much as they could. So they sent me to a vocational school where they paid for a vocational school where I got certifications in computer repair and like technology topics. Um, and after high school, uh, I kind of got access to faster internet for the first time, and I really wanted to play video games like every kid did. And so I started a company that was hosting game servers.
Amazing.
And I also started a business to repair people's computers, and I rented a storefront.
What was the impetus to starting a business? I mean, you said like most kids they want to play computer
Well,
games, but that's kind of where it ends. You're like, fuck it, I reckon I could get a return on this as well.
that's something to reflect on for sure. My parents started a business about 6 months before I was born, and I grew up with that business.
Uh-huh.
Um, and so entrepreneurship was something that I thought was valuable. Um, Being able to like wrap your head around a problem and like fix something for somebody else
Right.
seemed like a lot of it just seemed intuitive to me, right? I did all the personal finance stuff and all of the entrepreneur classes and business classes that my school would offer, my little podunk school of, I graduated with like 60 people. Um, and every summer I would go push mow lawns ever since I was like 12 years old. My dad lent me $75 to buy a push mower. I paid him back
Nice.
that summer. You know, I still
Uh,
have that thing in my garage 20 years later. And, you know, I made my first $1,000 with it. That's kind of a big deal. And, you know, the opportunity to go knock on someone's door and say, "Hey, your yard needs mowed." Sometimes you got the door slammed in your face. Like, my husband's coming home tonight to mow it. Why are you asking me, kid? Like, I got that all the time. uh, but like, then I get the others like, "Oh, okay, Sonny, come over here. You need something to drink? You thirsty? It's hot outside. You can mow my yard." I'm like, "Yeah, $50, lady." um,
and the
I
drink.
had that lawnmower paid off real fast. Um, and you know, I guess that's kind of the entrepreneurship salesman kind of thing that I kind of got stuck into between the ages of like 12 to 20. um, by the time I had dropped out of DeVry twice because I just couldn't put up with them. DeVry is a technical school, a for-profit technical school in the United States. It's kind of interesting past. A lot of people say a lot of bad things. A lot of people say a lot of good things. You know, at the end of the day, I'm just not made to have a career like that. I can't work for other people. Um, my parents had a trucking business. I did a dispatch for them or remote dispatch for them. Um, so you know, being able to organize rapidly changing information all the time, you know, I was able to do that there.
Right.
And really, when my buddy said, "Nick, you've got to help me start this mine at Minery," um, you know, I say, "Well, what do I, what value do I have to you?" He goes, "Well, you know, you're the doer. You know, you make the call and yell at the guy." And I'm like, "Huh? I'm good at yelling at people." Interesting. And I took that and I ran with it. Sometimes for worse, not for better. Um, and you know, today that applies to reaching out to vendors. That applies to um, negotiating with stubborn sellers of used equipment or whatever the case. Um, so what's really interesting about Bitcoin when you don't need permission, man. Like I didn't need permission. I didn't have to walk into the bank and say, "I'd like to sign up for my business." No, I didn't have to do that. So I was like, right as I turned 18, I started my LLC. Still have it today. Um, and I'm just going to pretty much squat on it forever. Um, and what that means for me is like I have this big length of business history that I've done throughout the years, both computer repair, game server hosting, server VPS, you know, whatever, all kinds of stuff. And just being able to like find that, like you said earlier, find the margin in these types of topics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it's always a fun challenge.
Yeah.
So
So
this
that's
spring, I started Mega Miner. Hopefully, it's a memorable name like Kaboom Racks was for you. Hopefully, I'll get you saying that next. Uh,
I already dig the name. I mean, I just have fascinations of, well, imaginations to like Astro Boy and old school Japanese, 80s cartoons.
uh, Perfect. You get it cemented in your head. And so, you know, you have Mega Miner. I am selling hardware. I'm selling Bitcoin miners, and you know, one of the services that I'm offering for people that is not typical of everyone else is I am buying your old hardware and helping you find a home for it. So if you are doing this for the long haul life cycle of this equipment, you likely end up with unprofitable equipment in your possession that you don't know how to extract the value out of. I can save you the hassle of dealing with a buyer on eBay that's charging you back, and I can be a better intermediary and purchase your equipment while selling you new equipment and help get your old equipment to new hands that appreciate it,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's in another country or some crazy guy with a solar farm and an RV. Um, you know, it's there's always somebody that wants all that stuff.
Oh, most definitely. Quick break just to say, if you're enjoying the show and digging what you hear, please consider supporting Discovering Bitcoin by shooting, boosting, sending, or zapping the show some sats. If you're listening via a podcasting 2.0 app such as Fountain, Podverse, or Breeze, it's easier done than said. All you got to do is tap the boost button or set an amount of sats to stream per minute while you're listening. Alternatively, if you want to zap me direct via a lightning address, please send zaps and sats, or zaps of sats, in support of the show to djdbtc@zeuspay.com. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. How has discovering Bitcoin changed you?
Well, it's pretty much, I guess, defining discovery. I have to rediscover some of the properties of Bitcoin all the time. The whole low time preference, high time preference, like debate, like that. Those types of topics are very interesting. Being able to say I have an asset that appreciates more than anything else year over year is extraordinary. And it's kind of like a way to weed out other people too in your life that have been in your life for years, that they can't wrap their head around it. They can't see it right in front of them.
Interesting.
If you look at like a cheap pair of mass-produced shoes, right? I won't use the house analogy because everyone does. You have the cheap pair of mass-produced shoes. 10 years ago they were $40, and now they're $70. Pretty much the same shoe, pretty much the same junk. They last you 6 months, and then you throw them away. You fill the landfill with it. It used to cost like tens of Bitcoin 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And so now it costs, not even a fraction of less than 100th of a Bitcoin. And watching everything around me priced in Bitcoin just dropping in value throughout my whole life has made, because my entire professional and adult life I've been entrenched in this industry as much as I can be. Watching everything around me go down in value, it's really hard to find other examples of other assets that are even worth owning if you're not using them constantly.
Right.
Like, you should probably have a pair of shoes, not 10. You should probably figure out where the cheapest T-shirt is that matches your personality. You should probably figure out, like, okay, you need an office chair so you don't have to go to a chiropractor, right? Like, you gotta. But other than a few small checklist items, like all your luxury goods, you just throw out the window, and then you kind of realize that, wow, we're so wasteful. Especially over the last 5-6 years, I've just tried to waste less. And it's, some people think I'm crazy. Like, I'll have a visitor at my house and I'll like have a special trash can for paper or plastic or food. We'll compost and all that stuff. And I would attribute all that stuff to the Bitcoiner mentality of trying to be less wasteful, right? Why would I buy a bag of dirt when I can make a bag of dirt out of the food I'm throwing away?
Yeah, but you're a miner, so aren't you supposed to be the most wasteful person on the planet? Like, what about the oceans, bro? Come on.
I just want to boil it. I'm trying to combat climate change by boiling the water out of the ocean so it doesn't rise to the sea.
Okay, so
trying to help out, really. I'm a good guy.
Yeah, you're boiling the oceans actively. You're contributing to that through your business with Bitcoin mining. So you think you can mitigate some of that by separating some plastic out from, some cardboard?
No, probably not. Probably will never offset that. But I would be really interested in a waste to energy process, for that plastic.
True.
It's not, then you get, I've been known to sit down and watch a lot of nonsense YouTube videos on how to harness power from trash.
There's a Wrath of Non posts something to that effect. There's a city in Japan that literally, I think it's the vast majority of their energy generation comes from like a tip, basically. Like
waste to energy is like a great topic. It's actually really interesting. Like, if you have like my home. I always joke my home is made out of cardboard and glue. Um, my house is made out of cardboard and glue, so it's mostly paper and like plastics. Like that's all it is, and like wood and like some sawdust and junk. Um, so if you were to bulldoze it in, what do you do with that material? Well, everyone just wants to bury it because that's like the laziest thing to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but if you burn it, you have power. Like heat can be now, of course, there's a couple steps here between here and there, but you know, burning waste can make energy. And so if you value your space and you don't want to ship your waste away, um, it could make a lot of sense to try to get tomorrow's product out of yesterday's waste,
Yeah,
no matter how you're
yeah.
doing it, whether you're composting a banana peel or burning your roof. Uh,
So this is biogas, right?
well, no, I mean, so waste energy is actually really interesting. So they pretty much, I know every one of them is a little different, but to oversimplify it, they pretty much just burn the trash. Like they take the combustible things like the plastics and the just junk that you have in your home. Everything around you, I'm sure, is flammable. Um,
At a certain point,
and
absolutely.
yeah, and they add a little natural gas to it. So I mean, there's not zero input. And they burn that and they use that to make steam, and they make the steam to turn a turbine, and they make power, just like a coal power plant would work. It's just they're supplementing the fuel with your waste, and of course, then you have to clean up the exhaust of that with scrubbers and so on. And there's like environmental concerns about some of those things, but like, what difference is if it's in a hole or if it's in the atmosphere?
Yeah,
I
okay.
know there is a difference, but it's kind of all the same thing. You know, you just moving stuff around on the surface of the earth.
Yeah, right. You're just changing state.
but but you know, Bitcoin allows us to think about how to interact with things around us, how to value things around us. Everyday knickknacks, you know, can be tomorrow's fuel. They could be why buy them to begin with. You know, why be wasteful to begin with when you could just save your Bitcoin? Now, this is a bad example for me, but like you could buy an iPhone every year, and if you don't need one, um, you could buy Bitcoin every year. I saw a funny chart the other day, and I didn't fact check it or anything, but it was like if you just bought a new iPhone, or every year you bought a new iPhone, you would have just bought Bitcoin instead. You know, you'd have like $30 or $30 million. I can't remember what it was, but the moral of the story is like, did you need the iPhone every year, or did you need it every other year?
Yeah.
um, and I will say, with my job, it's hard to not break one per year, but and I know there's other people that have that problem as well, but not everybody has that problem. Um, so you know, making sure you can keep your junk usable is valuable, because then you can buy more Bitcoin, or you can mine more Bitcoin, or you can mine something and then convert it to Bitcoin, right? You
Exactly.
can you can mine Monero on your iPhone, and then you can convert it to Bitcoin. You can do that today. You're gonna ruin your iPhone, but like you could do it. So next time you find a stolen iPhone on the ground and you think, huh, should I pick this up or are the feds watching me? You take that thing home and mine Monero on it. uh,
You've
I mean,
given me
there's a
a
lot of steps between here and there, but like there's an opportunity right there in front of you. And I think that's something about Bitcoin, not asking for permission, thinking about managing resources effectively, you know, just trying to just not be an idiot with the world around you.
yeah, like you can figure out effectively, yeah, fill your boots, be entrepreneurial, find that sly roundabout way to extract value that no one else has yet seen. Um, I didn't know about the Monero iPhone thing. I don't think I even have an iPhone.
Monero is a privacy focused cryptocurrency, but the main thing about it is it's supposed to be anonymous, but I could really doubt that it is. And I'm sure if anyone that's listening to me wants to argue with me, I'm sure they will. But but what's nice is it's supposed to be CPU based, so you can mine on old CPUs. Maybe not effectively, but is it your power or someone else's power? You
Mm.
know, if you go plug in some junk laptops at the RV park on the off season, and they don't know you're using that power, yeah, you're stealing electricity from somebody, but you're also just being resourceful.
Yeah, it's just gonna get wasted anyway, I guess. I don't know.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's yeah, I think just being resourceful, being scrappy about things, thinking about servicing this equipment would just be like servicing a fleet of vehicles, trucks. If you have a fleet of trucks that you have to maintain, keep them on the road. Just like that, you have to keep your Bitcoin miners mining. You have to keep them serviced. You have to make sure you take care of them. You're going to invest in knowledge on how to repair things if you own a large fleet of miners. You're going to invest in people that you can count on to solve your problems when you have those problems. I remember at our mine. Um, I remember our mine failed. I had no. I'm not disputing that whatsoever. We didn't do things perfectly, but I remember the amount of effort we put into trying to make sure we had a network that was always online,
Mm-hmm.
and that was pretty cool to me because I had never built a network that big. You know, 1,200 clients was pretty neat to me at the time. I had never seen anything like it, even at like I suppose the data center I walked through, I'm sure someone was doing that, but like I didn't think about it at the time. Being responsible for it was a whole different game. Um, so, we purchased used switches to save money. We purchased, you know, after we ran the calculation on how long it took kids to terminate cables, we purchased pre-terminated cables. um, just trying to make sure that you squeeze every penny of efficiency out of every task, I think is really indicative of a Bitcoiner.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, and just not letting, yeah, as you said, not letting those things go to waste. You think what I find is that when like people have personality traits, um, you know, that they've sort of cultivated over a period of time, whether consciously or unconsciously, and then what happens is they discover Bitcoin, they pass through that orange portal, and it amplifies all of those personality traits and sort of, I don't know, focuses them a little bit better, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for myself, it would be hard to gauge. I think I was introduced to Bitcoin when I was so young. I didn't have many measurable traits before that. I mean, I was interested in business. I was push mowing yards and building fence and shoveling snow, and those are all summer and winter jobs.
Mm-hmm.
But and I was interested in IT. I was interested in like pranking people too. Like there was once upon a time you could be like a entertaining with your computer virus. You could open someone's disk tray and they'd be like, "What the hell?" That's not how things work anymore. People are aggressive nowadays. Um, but that kind of those types of traits where I remember uh, prior to my complete entrenchment into Bitcoin, I think I had a lot of libertarian principles. Um, maybe not like lockstep with everybody all the time, but like just you want the ability to do things without permission.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to be impeded by artificial barriers, whether you agree with them or not, right? Um,
Yeah, you're that kid in high school that's like asking the teacher why.
I
Like,
did ask them
what are
why.
we
I
gonna
also
do? We're gonna
didn't
do
come to
this thing.
class.
And you're like, why? Why the fuck would
Yeah,
we do that?
yeah. I didn't go to class every day. Like I always asked why. And I had some teachers like really embraced me. Like I had a computer teacher when I was in middle school. I had a computer teacher where they would teach us how to type and like use like Microsoft Office 2003 or whatever it was. Um, we I wrote a lesson plan for him as a punishment for being a jerk. And like it blew my mind because I was like, wow, so are you because he expected me to be able to organize tomorrow's information today and articulate it to the rest of the class. And I was super nervous about that. And I think I did okay. I didn't go become a teacher or a professor, but like I think I did okay for a goofy middle schooler. Um, that worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
It,
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting because it's just like you. always always like they put the thumb on you. You want to be a butthead, and rebel. Like, oh, you're not going to tell me what to do, kind of thing. Like, I'm going to lean back in my chair if I want, kind of thing. And then they put some kind of artificial responsibility on you to test you. It's just really interesting, like looking back on it.
Oh, most definitely. It's interesting that that thought that you had about you've been in Bitcoin for such a long time, like as a kid, right?
You're like, what else is there now?
That's what I mean. Like, now there's a whole set of generation that are just going to come up that are going to be kids of Bitcoin parents or whatever. And I guess, yeah, it's interesting because like there's been a cohort of people that have passed through the Bitcoin filter, and it's amplified their character traits and personality traits. And then there's this new cohort, and there's even like a nascent cohort of people coming through that it's kind of reshaping or focusing. I don't know. It's really strange to think about. I'm not.
I mean, maybe Bitcoin can contribute to a greater anti-establishment thought process amongst all the lemmings that are out there,
God, a boy can dream, huh?
right? Like we just gotta convince everybody that the dollar's just whichever dollar, whether it's your Australian dollar or my U.S. dollar, it's they're all they're all worth less tomorrow. They
uh,
may not be worthless yet, but they are worth less.
we are running 180 currently to your 117. And yeah, we've got the Pacific peso, and in New Zealand it's even worse. It's up over 200. So you're definitely the cleanest dirty shirt in the laundry, but Bitcoin is pristine.
Yeah, I mean, you have Bitcoin's really insane to me. Um, I when I look at like the the interesting stat, market cap, as if we could get all of the Bitcoin, all the 20 million plus Bitcoin. Um, if we could if we could do that and then calculate what the market cap would be, it's interesting that there's like only a handful of conglomerates and superpowers that are bigger. You have like a handful of governments. You
Mm-hmm.
have a couple, a pretty long list of currencies, to be fair, um, because the currencies are kind of, well, what the hell are they in value?
Right.
And then you have a handful of companies, and like as soon as you see some of those largest companies in the world start to realize that the dollars or the monies that they're holding in their treasury don't make sense, the price of Bitcoin in dollars just it's going to go crazy, right? Like it doesn't make any sense to even own anything else.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, what is Apple thinking? They've got, what is it, in excess of $50 billion cash on their balance sheet. I'm pretty sure. Um,
Yeah, and I think their solution has been to buy back their stock from the stock market, which just changes the denominator of their stock.
exactly. And so, I mean, this thing exists, and you think, well, how much money? Like, I've always found that the people that are least interested in Bitcoin are the ones that most of the time have already kind of squared away, you know, the things that they require. Because there's no real incentive, right? You got to have an incentive. You got to have a motivator. And if you're sitting on $50 billion worth of cash, maybe that's a sufficient amount of cash to not have to worry about rapid devaluation, even though you definitely should, because that 50 billion of cash is going to be worth less tomorrow, next year,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah. The purchasing power is ridiculous. If you just want to maintain if you want to make sure you can produce the same 1,000 iPhones tomorrow that you did yesterday, you have to secure your purchasing power by putting, your money, whatever currency it is, into an asset that gets you closer to that goal. I guess you could prepay for the iPhones. But you probably aren't going to do that on a 6, 12, and 30-month basis. You know, you, you're going to start to have to think about other things besides that. And,
Exactly.
and I suppose like you could the convoluted way that someone like Apple or Nvidia or somebody Microsoft could could preserve their value. They could buy their own shares, then they could borrow against their shares or whatever later, because they still kind of have the same funny money dollar, but it's all inflated by their fake valuation that's also in dollars. So, what's value at that? You borrowed from the thing you're borrowing from to borrow. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's just complicated fiat nonsense that is just a giant. It's effectively a financial circle jerk, really.
Yeah,
You know.
that's good. That's good. And what's great about Bitcoin is like it doesn't care. The value of Bitcoin doesn't actually change. It's the value of the dollar against Bitcoin in these contexts. Um, it doesn't cost me any. Like, it costs me money to have my money at a bank. Um,
Yes.
Especially if it's in low amounts. It costs a servicing fee, or it costs money to send, or whatever. But if I go write down, uh, all the hip kids now that are using their 24-word wallets, if I go write down 24 words and I go import it into an offline computer and generate an address, send Bitcoin to that address from wherever, then I don't know, set the computer on fire. Then I just need those 24 words and the same software to get access again. I can put that piece of paper in my pocket and go across any border I want. Um, and you just can't do that with dollars.
No.
Like, there's no other currency really you can do that with, where you can just like move it around across international borders without consequence.
Yeah, it's really nuts. I actually, it was a surprising touch point for someone the other day when I was talking about it. That recently returned from a holiday kind of work trip in the US, and they were like, "Wait, so could I just have taken Bitcoin to the US and either used it there at various merchants that accept it, or trade it for dollars, and I would have got more than if I'd have swapped out the Aussie dollars?" And I was like, "Yeah, effectively, yeah." And they're like, "Oh," and that was their thing that kind of triggered in their brain.
It not only, I mean, it can be better,
Mm.
but you also get to pick your middleman, right? Like, if you're exchanging Australian dollars to U.S. dollars, you're kind of at the mercy of some other financial institution.
Right.
If you're using Bitcoin to USD, or Bitcoin to, what are you, AUD? Is that what it is?
Yeah, AUD, Aussie dollar
Um,
dues.
Yeah. Um, if you're doing that, you can kind of pick the drug dealer of your choice in the alleyway of your choice. Like, it doesn't have to be the bank. And so, like, that peer-to-peer foot market either eliminates or creates fees wherever there's stressors. Um, so you could see a politician arguing against, well, it creates fees when people can't get a hold of money. Well, regulation around any fee is always a problem. If you look at, disaster zones in the United States, when you have a hurricane or something, and they say, no predatory pricing on our water, well, then no one's going to bring you water. So, like, let them charge $30 a bottle for all I care. If someone will pay it, take it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if this guy wants 29 and that guy wants 30, who are they going to pay? Well, access is key. The free market allows access. Bitcoin completely blows all the barriers out of the water and allows people to access it however they want, without permission. And that's just incredibly valuable, because now you can convert your effort, your labor hours,
Mm-hmm.
into a currency that you're now allowed to use without restriction. Now, the word allowed, they might come kick in your door afterwards, but hopefully we can get past that. From a technical perspective, you can do it today. It's just, will you have consequences tomorrow? It remains to be seen.
Indeed, yeah, okay. Something to think about. What do you wish more people knew about Bitcoin?
What do I wish people knew more about? How portable it is. Just like I was saying, my mother doesn't understand that. When she goes to the bank to see what her balance is. I have all the wealth in the world on my iPhone, right? I have all the fruits of my effort, just condensed into a number on my iPhone. Like, how easy is that? It's just so portable, and people really they're entrenched in a system where there are people in charge. They don't have to be.
From a practical point of view, do you denominate your transactions with your various clients in Bitcoin? Because, I mean, I dare say you don't only service people in the US, right?
Yeah, so I don't do it that way. I accept Bitcoin as payment, but today, until they won't kick in my door otherwise, I have to operate in dollars.
Uh huh.
Um, so I mean, I'll take Bitcoin. I often pay vendors in Bitcoin, um, but it's difficult to price in Bitcoin because if I tell you I'll sell you this S19 today,
Right.
for uh, uh, 200,000 sats, that's a little overpriced right now. But 6 months ago, maybe it was cheap.
Okay.
So it's difficult because, and then the vendor has to assign value to it too. Because of the floating exchange rate, it's very difficult to operate, in Bitcoin like that.
Right. 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 So, yeah, consistency.
Those tables should turn once you have more than the majority,
Mm-hmm.
adopting Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Interesting. What does Bitcoin mean to you?
Um, it's my complete livelihood. You know, it's my wife and daughter's livelihood. It's Bitcoin and Bitcoiners are why we get to wake up late every day,
Mm-hmm.
and it's why we get to um, eat. It's why we get to go buy steak from the guy that does the grass-fed steak, not the factory steak. Like, it's. I'm not saying I'm living in the most luxury of luxury, but I'm doing pretty damn good for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so Bitcoin and my exposure to having access to and being familiar with Bitcoin has offered me that opportunity. So that's what Bitcoin means to me. It could also mean that to anyone else that gets involved at the right time.
This is the magic of it, right? Like, that is such a very understated, I dare I say it, humble way of appreciating, demonstrating gratitude towards this thing. Like, as you said, you're not smashing out the lap of luxury, buying yachts and things like that. But one of the things you said was it affords us the time to wake up late. Um, Now, that's not to say, I presume, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's not like you're going to slack off and just wake up at midday. But the point is that if you want to hang around in bed for 5 more minutes, just to spend that little extra time with your daughter, well, you can. Like, that's
I
golden.
truly hours even.
Hours. Well, there you
um,
go. Like,
and,
that's
and
priceless.
that's a luxury that so many my neighbors don't have that luxury. My physical neighbors next door, and they do not have that luxury.
Right.
They start their car every day at the same time.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't even leave the house if I don't have to. Like, I, and that is it's great. It's great to afford the opportunity to be in charge of yourself.
Uh-huh. Exactly. It's nuts, that autonomy, and I guess to an extent the sovereignty. There's sort of degrees, I guess, of sovereignty, scales of sovereignty potentially, and ideally we get to a point where we are genuinely sovereign individuals. That you have to dance the dance, right? There's always going to be some boot threatening to stomp on your face at any moment. But if you can kind of
Definitely.
shrink that boot, or maybe be a little bit more agile, then that's cool. And then it's just about working the degrees of the sovereignty to a point where you can potentially lead the dance, because of what you've done. Yeah, like awesome, amazing. Nick, this has been a tremendous conversation. I don't pretend to understand Bitcoin mining at all. I am one of those smooth brain left bell curve people that appreciate that meme that goes around explaining Bitcoin mining, where it's like a genie coming out of the ASICs. It's like, how does guess a number between 0 and whatever, and yeah, it's kind of that. That's my fucking understanding. I'm terrible.
Well,
But yeah,
there's the technical understanding, and then there's the economic understanding, right? You really don't have to have the technical understanding. Like, you don't have to know how to fix your car to drive your car.
true. This is true.
You can drive the Bitcoin miner. It's not too difficult to get started, but you just don't want to overcommit. You don't want to buy the fanciest car first.
Right. Yeah, don't overcommit. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for spending some scarce time, fun, and energy telling us the tale of how you discovered Bitcoin.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Prince, and I'm the host of the Once Bitten podcast. This is a podcast focused on Bitcoin. It's my mission to interview as many people as I can around the different aspects of Bitcoin and help people understand exactly what Bitcoin can mean for them and for their families and for their future. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Once Bitten podcast. Joining me today, Larry Lepard, my good friend, laser-eyed Larry. We got to meet each other in June 2022 when we were invited across by Andre Lojar. Go back 3 or 4 episodes and listen to Andre from Free Madeira. He invited across about 10 to 12 Bitcoiners to help him orange pill the government and the economic advisory of that island. Amongst that group was Larry. The others included Greg Foss, Jeff Booth, Obi Nwosu, Christian Anders from BTCX in Sweden, Knut von Holm, Nico from Consensus Network, BitcoinBook.shop. It was such a great weekend. Andre did a great job because Free Madeira has gone on to become the shining light of a small island nation trying to adopt a Bitcoin education program and push that education out amongst the islanders and amongst the businesses, and have done an incredible job. And getting to meet Larry was just a highlight of that trip. We've bumped into each other many times now around the world at different conferences. And then he dropped his book. If you've not read it, you should, and you certainly will. I'm sure you'll want to pick up a copy after this interview. It's called The Big Print, and we get into why he wrote it and the feedback he's been getting, and some very personal stories, which I don't think Larry's shared on any other podcasts. So, yeah, I look forward to you getting into this. Sit back, relax, and listen to this one with Larry. Before we get into it, please stack your sats. You know how to do that now. You need to go and meet people and stack peer-to-peer if you can. That's not always that easy because you might be the lonely Bitcoiner that hasn't met any other Bitcoiners yet. If you are that person, go back 1 episode and listen to my episode with Dion Wilson from Broadway to Bitcoin. It will fire you up. Or get to a conference. At time of this release, Riga is tomorrow, literally. So if you're not coming to Riga, don't worry. You can get to Helsinki. That's a week later. I'm dropping this stuff on you. I've been dropping this stuff on you for weeks now. Use the code BITTEN. Get to Riga, get to Helsinki, and then get to the Balkans Bitcoin conference in Bulgaria. All the links are in the show notes. Use the code BITTEN. You'll get 10% discount. Join Orange Pill app. Find 17,000 other Bitcoiners around the world. You will find people to trade with, and more importantly, to collude with and get together and build projects and build events together and push the education out amongst your own communities. Stack sats across Europe with Relay, relai.ch/bitten. Download the app today. Get stacking up to 1,000 Swiss or equivalent per day. They are your keys, so they are your coins. The wallet is built in for you. You have to write down your seed phrase. This is done right. Swan Bitcoin can do all of this for you in the US. swanbitcoin.com/bitten if you're across the pond. Bitbox is the place for you to start taking complete self-custody of your Bitcoin. Get your Bitcoin off the apps, off the exchanges. Start working out, start learning how these devices work. The Bitbox 02 is a Bitcoin-only edition brought to you by the team over at bitbox.swiss/bitten, and you will get a discount for using the code bitten. And they've got new devices coming out. Look out for some announcements with Nova. So follow Bitbox, watch what they're doing, read their blogs, get over, visit their website, see what else they're up to, because it's really interesting stuff. Bitbox 02, Bitcoin only edition. Take control. Paywithflash.com is the best way for you to start accepting Bitcoin at your place of business, if that is what you are looking to do. If not you, then who? You should be charging for your goods and services and knowledge and skill set in Bitcoin. And you can do that now. Is click and play with paywithflash.com. At plebeian.market is a place for you to go and start finding goods and services that you can buy with sats. And get over to my friend Dave Bennett's Nanya Business podcast. He releases a show almost on the daily now. He's got over 1,100 episodes. He reads the news that you can use. It's all about Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. It's pure signal. That is Bitcoin and. And finally, if you want to curate your Bitcoin podcast listening, 40 hours per week can be difficult. No longer. I'm about to run out of music. There is no more excuses for not listening to 40 hours per week of Bitcoin content. Get over to Bubble, BUBBL.FM. Check out their service where they can curate all of the Bitcoin podcasts for you in the space and make a bespoke podcast episode for you on the particular interesting topic that you want to listen to. So that's Bubble, BUBBL.FM. Go and check them out. And please listen to this episode with Larry on Fountain app. And if you're listening to that on mobile, take a look, search around a little bit, play with the app. You will find the video edition right there in your hand of this episode with Larry. All right, Larry, we are recording, and it's great to see you. And as we were just saying to each other, 2 times in the space of a short amount of time, because you came across the BTC Pro.
Yeah, I sure did. I really enjoyed that show. That's the right kind of show, as I think you would agree with me, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we even got to hang out next to each other and sign books, and you were signing the big print, which we have right
Thank
here.
you so much. Yeah.
I think you're even sold out. I think you put everybody.
I did. I didn't have all that many books. Amazon made it very hard for me to get books to Prague, but I think I got maybe 150 books or something, and I sold them all. So that's good. Yeah, it's all. And more importantly, I met a lot of the people behind the NIMS on on Twitter. I mean, so I've got all these Twitter friends I haven't met in person, and a lot of them came up and said hello, which was really great. I mean, it's hanging out with the plebes. It's just so much fun. I mean, the Bitcoiners are great.
Yeah, that is a lot of fun when you get to meet people and you're like, oh, you're XYZ, whatever it is on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very, very fun. Right, okay, Lauren, you're here and you're ready to ask the first question.
Yeah.
So, to preempt it, we were in the car just about 20 minutes ago, and I was explaining who you were and a little bit of your background and how you've been, we'll get into it, but investing pretty much your whole career.
Yeah.
So Lauren wants to know this.
What was the worst investment you've ever made?
Oh boy, there are lots of them, Laura.
Well, we know the best one.
Where do I start? The best one is Bitcoin, and will prove out to be Bitcoin. Oh, I don't know. I was a venture capitalist before I became a Bitcoiner, and before I became a sound money. Well, I was a sound money person on the side, but I was really a venture capitalist, and so I invested in so many things that did not work, and that's really the nature of that game. And probably more recently, I would say I've invested in some gold mining projects that didn't work, just horribly messed up. One of them was out in California, a company called Rise Gold, where the environmentalists prevented us from building what would be a very highly profitable and good mine for the community, completely safe, completely environmentally friendly. But that doesn't really matter in California because there's no rule of law there. I would say probably the most recent one that's seared in my memory was in 2011. If to bring some monetary history into all of this, in 2000 they really started printing money, and gold was at $260, and in 2011 gold was at $1,900. So in that period, and that was turbocharged by the great financial crisis in '08, where it was 400 or 500, and it went. Well, no, it was more than that. It was 700, 800 at the time, but it went up to 1,800. And so, 250 to 1,800 is a pretty good investment. I was there. But I was silly, and I thought, well, this is great. The currency system's going to fail. Satoshi was over doing his thing. I wasn't even aware of it. The currency system's going to fail. I'm just going to hang on to all this gold. And because, 1,900 is just the beginning. We're going to 10,000 because they had QE1 and QE2 and QE3, and they had ZERP and everything else. I thought, well, okay, I'll get rich off this gold. And my wife and I even, moved into a bigger house and, spent some money in anticipation of thinking how great it was going to be. And then what happened is they changed the rules again. They started paying interest on excess reserves. They didn't let the added money get out into the economy and create the inflation that they thought it would create. And gold plummeted from 1,900 back to 1,000. And my fund was down enormously in the same time period. It was horrible. So the whole 2011 to 2015 period was really a difficult and searing period. It was probably the worst investment call I'd ever made. And it was because I couldn't really see what was going on the other side of the curtain and all the levers they were pulling to manipulate things. And so it cost me a great deal of money. But it also hardened my resolve to recognize that sound money is what's going to win, and sound money is important. And during that window, I found Bitcoin, and so there was a silver lining to all the pain associated with the badness of that one particular investment and believing in gold at the time. And a lot of people ask me about gold today, and some Bitcoiners say, well, gold's going to go down, and they're right. Bitcoin's going to demonetize gold. Bitcoin's going to outperform gold, but in fiat nominal terms, gold's not going down. Fiat's going down much faster than gold and Bitcoin, and of course Bitcoin will outperform gold. But those who don't want the volatility of Bitcoin, gold's probably your best second choice. So, but that was a very humbling experience for me, Lauren. It caused me to kind of rethink everything, and like I say, there was probably a silver lining in there. I found Bitcoin. So
I remember those days, those frothy gold days.
were you there? Were you there at the time? Were you involved in that area?
Yeah. Well, I was on foreign exchange broking desks, but with on our desk we had the gold options as well, and
Right.
yeah. So that's where all the eyes were looking, all the attention shifted there. Everybody wanted to be the next gold broker, and everybody wanted to be the next gold trader.
Right.
And the retail market was frothy as all hell. All of the financial advisors, their lackeys were on the phone pushing you different funds. You want to get in gold mining funds? Yeah. You want to get in gold stocks? Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Everything was gold.
Yeah, it really was. It got overheated like so many things, and it's fundamentally, we've now exceeded those highs, but that was also 10 years ago. So all these markets are cyclical, and yeah, it's humility. I mean, if you're not humble as an investor, the market will deliver a dose of humility to you. At least that's been my experience, having done this for 40 years, and so. I try to frame everything in terms of probabilities. Nothing is for sure, but you can stack the odds in your favor.
100%. Right, Lauren, thank you for your question. Did you have any follow-ups, or are you done?
I think I'm done, but
Okay.
thank you so much for answering my question.
Thank you, sweetie. That was a great question.
Thank
You're
you.
lucky to have such a squared away dad. You guys are going to be in a very good position as you grow up because you're going to see this whole thing unfold.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for your
I
question.
grab my laptop. Sounds so good.
Okay. This one.
Yeah, no.
Okay. You want to take that one? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Smart girl. Pretty. How old is she?
14.
There you go.
Growing fast.
Yeah, probably.
I was thinking, Larry, actually back to the first time we met, and that was back in Madeira,
Yeah,
June. So just over June 22, just over 3 years ago. That's wild. That's when, the Free Madeira thing was being formed, and
Yes.
Andre was putting all of that together, and we had such a great time.
I remember it well, and probably most pointedly, what I remember is we were walking down to some event or thing we were going to, or we were going to take an elevator down to the beach or whatever, and you and I were walking next to each other, and we started talking about Sam Bankman-Fried, and we both looked at each other and said, there's just something not right with that guy. He's just the guy's got to be a fraud. I mean, there's just no way that it just doesn't add up. He's not worth $8 billion. His coins aren't worth it. He's a shit coiner, blah, blah. And we both looked at each other and said, yep, it's absolutely certain that thing is going to blow up. And that was it. We just kind of ended the conversation. But it wasn't that far after that what we had both been discussing actually came to be true. Right?
And it was the same weekend as well that we were all spending with each other that the wheels started coming off at Celsius. And
that's right.
That's
exactly right. Yeah, that shitcoin scheme unraveled. Yeah. So, and it's so amazing to me that there's so many shitcoiners still around. I mean, you see some of the big Bitcoin people doing podcasts with a few of them, which is kind of disappointing to me. And then recently I tweeted something. I think I did a pod where I talked about how they're all going to zero. And I think the guy who did the interview had a pretty big shitcoin following, so he retweeted it. And boy, oh boy, I mean, there are a lot of shitcoiners still and crypto bros still around because I just got flamed. It was great. I mean, I managed to block like 200 people in an hour because, I just got flamed by the XRP crowd and the Solana crowd and all of it. And it's just like the ETH crowd. It's like, oh my God, these people still believe. I mean, the Doge crowd. I mean, how can Doge have any meaningful market value? I just don't get it. It makes no sense to me, but there it is. It does. So
BSV is the one for me. That's
which one?
BSV, Bitcoin Satoshi Vision.
Oh yeah, that one too. Yeah.
Craig was proven to be a fraud, and he has fled the country. But yet, if you ever meet a BSVer, they're still so like like the programming they've been through is so bad that they can't see it, and they've got all of these cope arguments, and it's just wow, you guys.
It is.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I didn't realize Craig had flown the country. He didn't want to pay the fines, or is he arch and anonymous, or where'd he go?
I hadn't realized either until I had a couple of guys on the podcast the other day, yet to be released. So Mark Hunter and Arthur Van Pelt. And together they're writing a book about fake Toshi. And this book it's taken over their lives for the last couple of years. And there's going to be 3 separate books. They're trying, because it's so like the information that they keep unturning, just keeps coming in. So they're going to take you through like an arc of like the journey of how it all came to be.
Right.
And it was those guys that informed me that he's gone, he's hopped town. Which is the classic way charlatans work, right? I mean, if you think about in the US, for a perfect example over on, especially, go west, young man, right? You've got the charlatans, the snake oil salesmen, the horse rustling folk. They would get run out of town as soon as they're found out.
They literally do get run out of town once people figure them out. Yeah, that's right.
God, we need more of that. We need more.
We certainly do. I mean, shaming in the public square, right? I mean, it's. Yeah, they're, I mean, sadly, whenever there's something where there's a lot of new money coming into it, you're going to attract grifters, and you're going to attract con men, you're going to attract, false prophets. There's enough of that around Bitcoin. In fact, I spent a piece of the book talking about that, trying to kind of address the fact that because as you know, I come from the gold community, and so gold people are pretty good at sniffing out bullshit. And a lot of them saw all that, and they were like, "God, I'm not touching this thing. Look at these grifters." And my response was, "You're right. You're right. Those people are grifters, but don't let that obscure the technological development that Satoshi created. Satoshi created a new technology. It's an enormously important development. And yeah, you've got, people who are fakes hanging around the hoop trying to make money, but the development's real, and you can't ignore it, or the cost of ignoring it's going to be high."
Yeah, absolutely it is. Well, Larry, let's get the listeners up to
Yeah, where do you want to
speed
go?
well, I want to go all the way back, because in your book, I told you this in Prague. I really loved like the personal touches, getting to know the real Larry. You can
Yeah.
you can go on macro podcasts and talk about this, that, and the other thing as much as you like, but it's the real details, the personal details, that I think draws people into.
Thank you. Yeah, I did it that way because people like stories. People watch movies that are stories, and people don't read textbooks. And there are much better books on Bitcoin that have been written than mine. I mean, Safe's is one, Lynn's is one, Jeff's is one. But there didn't seem to me, I thought there was a missing spot in the marketplace for a book that kind of told one person's story and had enough interesting angles to it that people would get hooked. And then my book agent read it and said, "This story about you at Harvard Business School, we got to put this right in the front because this is going to hook them." And I've had a very interesting sound money life, and it's kind of all led up to the writing of this book. And I'm 68, and this is kind of frankly, this is probably my last public act. I mean, I wrote the book. It'll stand the test of time, I hope. I mean, I hope there will be a big print in 5 years. I'm pretty sure there will be. And I intend to, kind of pull back a little bit more from the community, not be as involved. And there's not a book 2 coming, and I'm not selling newsletters, and I'm going to kind of glide more into retirement and focus on, family, friends, and fitness. And so, so I laid it all out there. And I also thought that, it's very hard for people to know in the investment world who's honest and who's not. And so, I showed a lot of warts in that book. My successes and my failures. And I thought, well, if you're willing to do that, that shows a certain amount of strength. And then I think it builds a certain amount of credibility. And so that's why I did it the way I did it,
That's why I liked Lauren's first question, why she come up with that straight away, because in the book, you talk a lot about the failed investments.
Oh yeah, I've made a ton of mistakes, and that's why I caution people. I might be wrong about this too. I don't think I am, and I think I look at Saylor, I look at all the other bright people hanging around the hoop, and I'm pretty sure we're all right. But nothing is certain in this world.
So let's take you back, because you talk about when you're a young man, and I think there's something else that happens to us Bitcoiners. When we find Bitcoin, we realize where we were predisposed to find it in a past life with something that happened when, it's like a touch point. So there was a story in the book about you growing up and something happening to the family business. Did you want to take us through that and what that was like to witness as a young man?
Yeah, it was very, very traumatic. This was, and I'm probably older than most Bitcoiners. I go to these shows, I talk to people about 2008, and they say, "Well, I was in grade school or I was in high school." Yeah. So in 1979, so Nixon broke the gold standard in 71, which is the wrong thing to do, and they had massive inflation throughout the 70s, as everybody knows. And in order to get it under control, this man that all the Keynesians call a hero, Paul Volcker, came in as the Fed chairman, and he jacked up rates very, very high, higher than they'd ever been, actually, 20% on the Fed funds rate. Kind of, we're going to defend the dollar and we're going to crush inflation.
So wait, he hiked it 20% or
20%? He hiked the rates to 20%.
To 20%.
The nominal interest rate on borrowing money was 20% a year, like a credit card, just under the credit card rate today. Right. And my father was running a retail furniture business in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and he carried a big inventory of furniture that he put out on the floor. People would say, "Oh, I like that couch, deliver it." And I can't recall the dollar figures, but they were substantial. And of course, he didn't own the furniture. He didn't have the money always to carry the inventory, so he'd borrow. to carry the inventory. And so if he was borrowing at 5%, well, that was one number. If he was borrowing at 20%, that was 4x the number. And I'll never forget. And also at the time, the economy was kind of going through a downturn and recession. People weren't buying as much furniture. And I'll never forget it. I mean, it was very, very scary, watching him suffer through that because he was very afraid he was going to go bankrupt as a result of this Fed policy move. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, there was, farmers and other people who had borrowed money. I mean, there was a great story of a guy who was a farmer who drove his tractor into Washington, D.C. with a shotgun and, intended and tried to assault the Federal Reserve building, to go take a shot at Volcker. I mean, this was, right. I mean, what I'm getting at is I don't think the Fed always understands the implications of all of the things they do. To them, it's all just Keynesian theory and, oh yes, our models say we should be at 20% or at 0%. Nobody knows what the right interest rate is. The right interest rate should be set by the market. The book talks about that. It's supply of savings against the demand for investments. And we all know that. That's classic theory. But the Fed doesn't operate that way. I mean, the Fed is the one area of our economy that's still a government-controlled price, which makes no sense. I mean, Russia had government-controlled prices; they failed. So, they do it, and what they don't necessarily understand is, their downstream implications. There are real people behind those numbers. My father, got sick. I recall, we were eating, tuna fish sandwiches and peanut butter and jelly for dinner because buying meat was not something we were going to be doing in those conditions. I mean, it was tough. And, I remember seeing him scared. And,
How old were you?
What's that? I was, in 79, I was 20. 22. I was born in 57.
Right.
So, yeah, so I was 22 years old. Yeah.
So a young man, old enough to know exactly what's going on and pick up on the signals, like,
Yeah, like, holy shit, Dad. I mean, are you going to fail? Is your business going to fail? And he's like, I don't know, maybe. I mean, it was terrifying, to be frank. I mean, there's a guy who's my hero, and he's talking about, he might go bankrupt. I'm like, what? And of course at the time I didn't understand everything I understand now. I didn't understand how he got there. But now as I piece it all together, I'm like, holy shit, that's what did it. And I mean, the flip in the same story in the book I talk about too, the related event was, my grandfather ran the same business in 1929, got all the wrong signals from the Fed, which is we're in a boom in the roaring 20s because they kept rates too low and they inflated a bubble. Borrowed money to increase the size of his business. Bang, the stock market collapse hits and the credit bubble bursts, and he spends the next 10 years begging the bank not to foreclose on him. And my grandmother and grandfather were badly scarred from it. They always talked about it. They were always, she was one of those people who would, she kept the wax paper after she'd used it. She'd keep the tinfoil after she'd use it and reuse it. I mean, these were people who, she told me about how, coffee was a luxury and, biscuits were standard fare for food in those days. I mean, it was tough. And same thing, driven by misdirected Fed policies that created the Great Depression. I mean, the Fed tries to claim that, they're saving us from another Great Depression. That's bullshit. They created the first one. So, so there's that. And then, of course, it came my turn, which on a much smaller scale, but I'm running a fund in 2008, and I've got the housing thing correct, and I'm short all the housing stocks, and, I'm short all the, financials that have lent to the housing stocks. I know they're all over levered and going to go bankrupt, and then they changed the rules, and they banned the short selling, and so they took away I would have had a great year, and they took it all away from me. So it's just over and over again. So, I've seen this pattern. I know how this works. I know how this impacts people. And I've seen my family suffer from it. And so, I figured somebody's got to just stand up and say, hey, it's not right. I mean, I wrote the book, principally because I felt like so few people understand what the real root cause of this problem is. So few people truly understand it. And, the brainwashing, the Keynesian brainwashing has just been so extreme that, it's like, I'm absolutely convinced I'm onto something that's completely true. And yet imagine if the whole world didn't know it. I guess, I'm sure, Copernicus and Galileo had the same feeling. It's like, no, you guys are idiots. this is not the way it works. I can prove to you that the planets are going around the sun. And everyone's like, no, that's not true. It's just not that way. And that's how this is. I mean, this is just so broken. This monetary system is just so broken, and it has been broken for a long, long time. And so it feels normal to everybody, but it's not. It doesn't have to be. So, therefore the book, right?
Yeah, well done, mate. Well done for writing.
Thanks.
I'm sure you've had a lot of good feedback. So we'll go to the opening scene because so you had your grandparents' family business passed down to parents' family business. Then you decide you're not going to go sell furniture. You're going to go on to Wall Street, or was that the path?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I went to business school and Wall Street, and then into investment management. Right.
Right. Okay. And then fast forward to actually no. Before we get to 2018 and the opening scene in the book, what was that like for you? Like you're on Wall Street in what, like the 80s, 90s?
Yeah. So when I say Wall Street, it was actually kind of a subset of Wall Street because I was actually a venture capitalist. I spent a couple of years on Wall Street as a financial analyst before business school. I went to business school and I got out and I got in the venture capital business. So it was finance and it was investment management. But what it really was investing in small technology companies that were private and sometimes public. But we had funds under management, and the theme we were playing, and I was at two different firms throughout my career. The theme we were playing was this technology is going to change the world. And the IBM PC was introduced in '81, and I started in the business in '82. So we were buying disk drives and graphic cards, and I mean you name it, Dell Computer, all these great businesses that sprung out of a non-digital world. We participated in, and it was fantastic. I loved it. It was, and it was honest too. I mean, you put your money in, the business would get better. You'd sell it, when it had matured, etc. I mean, there wasn't a lot of sleight of hand in it, although there was some at the fund management level and some of the bullshit some of the venture guys pulled with their limited partners. But setting that aside, in general, the process of finding a person who had an idea, had a business that was growing, they needed capital to grow it. You gave them capital, they grew it, and then later on it went public or whatever, it got sold, and you made a profit. That was beautiful. And I did that really from '83 till into the early 2000s. And kind of my last cycle was internet. I got very lucky. I found the internet in '93 or '4. I bought a bunch of private internet companies. They went on to go public, made a ton of money, did really well. But then actually in 2000, 2001, I could feel that was a bubble too. That even though the internet was very real, it was going to continue to go on, the price of the stocks were way, way, way ahead of themselves. And so I kind of moved away from that, retired from the venture business and started managing my own money, with a theme of just trying to do growth at a reasonable price. And I did some interesting things. I went to India, bought a bunch of the cell phone manufacturers in India, or cell phone providers in India when it was growing very rapidly. I was just looking for growth at a reasonable price, which is the name of my fund, the GARP fund. So, and then when the bubble emerged in the financial area, GFC, that became very obvious to me in '06 and '07. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do half of this stuff as growth at a reasonable price. I'm going to do the other half. I'm going to short these things because this is going to blow up. And so I was where Michael Burry was, but I didn't even know what a CDS was. I mean, I had no idea. All the great leveraged, sophisticated things that he was able to buy, I didn't have a broker swap deal or agreement, any of that kind of stuff. I was just shorting the stocks, and it worked. It was working great. I was short Bear Stearns. That worked in March of 2000, of 2008. I was short a lot of the subprime companies. They all went down. That worked. But the big one was obviously in the fall, and of course I was short them, and I was doing very well. And then they changed the rules, made me cover my shorts at a loss. So the year, turned out to be a crappy year for me, but not a big crappy year.
How did they do that? How did they just all of a sudden say, no, you can't short? Like,
it was just an SEC. It was an SEC directive. So, I mean, if you Google, SEC ban on short selling 2008, and you'll see the press release. I think it was September 21 or 22. I think it came right after Lehman failed. And they realized they really had, a shitstorm on their hands. And this was before TARP, and TARP was soon thereafter. And they're like, oh my God, this whole system is going to implode if we don't stop this. And they also realized that some smart hedge funds, and me plus others, were shorting these things. And they just said, hereforth, we are putting a ban on short selling of all financial stocks. in the United States. And if you are short, you need to cover them right now. And so, as you can imagine, what that did was for a very brief period of time, all those stocks went up very, very rapidly. And so, I might have had a profit in something and I'd lose half or all of that profit as it rallied. And then, of course, once all those shorts had covered, they went back down and a lot of them went to zero. So they would have been shorts that would have been highly profitable. But of course, we weren't there anymore because they changed the rules. And, I mean, this is a similar thing, just as a data point. There was a time way back in time, it goes back quite some time now, where the Hunt brothers tried to corner the silver market. And they did, and they pushed the price. And, the CME and the SEC, they literally changed the rules and said it's illegal to buy silver long. Just categorically, it's illegal to buy silver long. The exchange is only going to accept sell orders. And sure enough, that caused the silver price to collapse. And so, I mean, they did it with GameStop, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a great movie about it that came out that showed how Ken Griffin intervened, and they got the company to issue some more shares, and they got Robinhood to shut down at the right points in time, and so on and so forth. I mean, Wall Street was cornered, and they pulled the card where they changed the rules.
And that one is so disgusting because the Robin Hood users were just your retail guys, like they were.
Absolutely.
And retail had won. It was done.
Absolutely. There were more shares short than there were shares outstanding. I mean, they should have driven Ken Griffin into bankruptcy. He should be bankrupt, and instead he's worth $40 billion, and he holds forth on stuff on Twitter. Whenever he holds forth on Twitter, I just blast him. I mean, he's like this guy Lloyd Blankfein, who ran Goldman Sachs, who comes out with all these policy suggestions and so forth on Twitter. And I always just blast him and say, dude, shut the fuck up. You were bankrupt and we bailed you out. We don't want to hear what you have to say. I mean, these people play by two sets of rules. So,
yeah.
And therein lies the problem. I mean, these two sets of rules allow them to get bailed out. That bailout comes as a form of printing money, which they benefit from because they can ride the inflation wave, and the rest of us pay more money for groceries. I mean, the one thing I will say is this is a sophisticated fraud, Princey. I mean, this is not, it's not for. I mean, like when I wrote my book, I handed it to my wife, and she started reading. She said, "Hang on a second here. What's the Federal Reserve?" My wife was very smart, but this is just not her area. She's an author. This is not her area of expertise. And she says, "You got to explain this." And so, they've created a system that really benefits them, and they've wrapped all these words around it to make it sound like it's in all of our best interest, but it's really not. It's rigged in their favor, and we got to call them out on it. We've just got to call them out on it, and that's what the book tried to do.
I totally agree with you, and like we've said here on this podcast just today, like the money system is broken, but it's not. It's working as designed, Larry. It's working
That's a fair point. Yeah. Very good point.
But that's the dark side of it.
From their point of view, it's not broken at all.
No, it's running along tickety-boo. It's absolutely working as designed.
Absolutely.
They can do whatever they like, whenever they like, and affect the markets and create the bubbles and then pop the bubbles. But, like the great Wall Street crash of 27 to 28, whenever it went down, completely engineered. Totally engineered.
Well, and that's why we have the Cross of Gold speech and everything else. I mean, the banks have been very smart, very sophisticated. They get all the farmers into debt. I mean, and even Thomas Jefferson said this, one of his famous quotes, through the process, if you're a financier and you can control the money and you can inflate and deflate at will, you can get everybody else off sides. And so, you crash everything and asset prices fall, and everybody who's levered up goes bankrupt and loses those assets. And then you buy those assets for pennies on the dollar, and you end up getting rich. I mean, an amazing, more modern case of it is Jamie Dimon is a billionaire based on stock options that he issued to himself in 2008. JPM was right at the edge of bankruptcy. They gave him an enormous slug. I mean, how do you being the CEO of a bank, how do you become a billionaire? I mean, that's just unheard of. That had never happened before. And yet, if you issue stock options to yourself at a very low valuation when it looks like the world is ending, and it's not because you're tied in with the government, the system, you reinflate, you will end up silly rich, and he has. So it's a very broken system, and the hope here is that the book will go viral and will get enough people to understand this and support sound money and honest politics and the alternative. And I know I mean, there are people who have accused me of being kind of Don Quixote here. I mean,
Mm.
whether this is going to work or not, I don't know, right? But I mean, Satoshi gave us a really good weapon. So I think the answer is I'm highly confident it's going to work. The timeline, we may have to be more patient than I'd like to be, but because history shows that human beings do gravitate towards the best ideas. I mean, maybe not instantly, but eventually. And I haven't found the large logical reason why Bitcoin is not the best monetary idea out there. I just haven't found it. And I think those of us who are in it know it, and those of us who know it, our numbers are growing every day. And so, we'll go through the Gladwell adoption curve, and eventually everybody will know it. And then, of course, it'll just be money. And your kids and my grandkids will talk about things. Well, that car costs 30 Satoshis or whatever the heck it costs. I mean, it's funny. Saylor talked about a $21 million Bitcoin in 21 years. I'm like, yeah, okay, that may be true, and that's all great. But what's gasoline going to be? It's going to be $1,000, a liter. I mean, or we don't know. I mean, and the problem is the measuring standard we're using, which is fiat currency, is getting inflated so damn rapidly. It's almost like some of this stuff has no meaning, right? It's hard. So.
Yeah, and therein lies the beauty of the meme, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin.
Exactly. I mean, and it can't get inflated. We know exactly what it is. The fact that for the first time in human history, we have an uninflatable source of money. That's such a big deal. It's huge.
So being a gold guy as well, you'd have, and to take us back to the end of the 1920s again, when America was on its absolute knees, you're seeing, you're seeing starvation, you're seeing all kinds of just complete and utter destitution, people completely destroyed by what they did at the back end of that decade. And then you go into the new decade and you've got all this hype. You've got FDR coming in with his big new deal in 33. And the first thing he does when he's voted in is he signs the Emergency Banking Act. And then the second thing he does is sign Executive Order 6102, because he can do that under the Emergency Banking Act, which he had just signed in like a week before, and steals everybody's gold, for want of a better word.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did. Yeah, and the Supreme Court doesn't call him on it. Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. I mean, we've got, the founders, what did Ben say? A republic if you can keep it, right? I mean, the founders set up this document to try and limit the powers of government, and probably better than most other governments in the history of the world, it's done so. I mean, I still prefer America to, China, Korea, Russia, a lot of other places, but a lot of the original founding fathers' principles have been badly compromised, badly, sadly. And, having said all that, if we wipe the monetary slate clean, we might get a chance to rewrite the Constitution and reinforce some of the core, principles that were in the original document. Or maybe we evolve towards a system that's much more like Switzerland, where, do we really need these enormous nation states that can have nuclear weapons and bombers and aircraft carriers and all this? I mean, maybe we can devolve into a lot more, smaller regional governments. And the funny thing is, I mean, war is a really funny thing. I mean, I don't know many sane people who really want to go somewhere else and kill other people. I just don't know. I don't, most sane people just want to live their life, raise their family, die peacefully, et cetera, and yet there are some people who decide they want to kill other people. And of course, if they, migrate to the top of a big power structure like, Hitler did, they can do it. We got to stop that. And, one of the things that enables that's the broken money, because they can do it without paying for it. And if they suddenly had to pay for it and we all had to vote on it, I think the vote would be kind of an overwhelming and a resounding no, we're not doing that. So.
Yeah, it's a very sick part of the whole fiat game that you can. Yeah. How many people are employed by the militaries all around the world that can be shipped over? They're trained to kill other human beings. Like, that's the most inhuman. Like, that's there's a primal instinct in you to do no harm.
Correct.
In clown world,
if you're healthy. if you're healthy. I mean, there are, there is. I mean, I don't know what psychiatrists would say. There's some portion of the public that are psychopaths. I mean, there are some. There are some people who are sick. There's no doubt about it. And frankly, that's why we do need, in my opinion, we do need some government. I mean, I want sick people to be thrown in jail. Um, I want rule of law, and I'd be happy to pay 10% of my earnings or my net worth to have that occur. But it's gotten so that we're so far beyond that 10% level that it probably would require. I think most of the world. I was talking to a guy when I was in Prague show in Italy, from Italy. I said, I want to move to Italy. He said, no, you don't. I said, why not? He said, because at the margin, I pay 65 cents of every euro I make to the government. I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. It's just crazy.
Yeah. I think most people would be shocked to figure out that come the end of their working career, their working life, they've probably handed over anywhere between 60 to 85%, and it is just unreal. And then
I don't know if it's high, but I know it's got to be 40-50 when you consider all the added taxes. I just it's gross. It's really gross.
So let's go to, you're sitting at this conference at the Harvard Business School. Have you got the?
No, it's good. I'm
You're
fine.
good. Okay, you're sitting in. So what? Yeah. Why did you go to this conference, and what happened? And what made you stand up and challenge the guy?
Well, I'm the Mark Baum character, right? I mean, so I went to the conference. Let me tell you. Let's set the scene. So the conference is Harvard. It's 2018. So it's now 10 years after the GFC, which occurred in 2008. And I think the conference was billed as, a review of 2008. What have we seen? What have we learned? And the speakers were, Paulson, Geithner, Larry Summers. Bernanke was not there, but and a few other Harvard professors and econ types. They were all up on a panel, and the best way to describe it was kind of a victory lap. They were kind of like, look, 2008 was an incredible event. We didn't expect it. Obviously, there were regulatory errors that happened that allowed it to occur, but goddamn, didn't we do the right thing? We came in here and we were the committee to save the world, and save the world we did, and we acted courageously and aggressively, and this, it's just, and that literally they were making speeches similar to that. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and they'd get resounding applause, right? 400 people, resounding applause. And I got to give Geithner credit that he had the balls to ask this question, but he figured, well, what the heck, let's have some fun. And he got up and said, is there anybody here who thinks that we didn't do the right thing? And nobody's hands went up, so I put my hand up. And I by the way, as this whole thing was going down, I was just getting sicker and sicker. Like, you guys are a bunch of fucking frauds. You didn't do the right thing. I can't believe you're sitting here. Not only did you fuck everybody over with your response to this thing and hurt the middle class, all the people lost their houses, et cetera, but you also, here you are, you have the gall to come here and try and brag and pound your chest. I mean, like as a redemption tour. And I think at that point in time, Geithner and somebody else might have just released a book talking about, and Bernanke's The Courage to Act was already out, all that kind of stuff. So they were, it was a victory tour. And I couldn't bear it. And I just said, fuck it, somebody's got to say this, right? And so I raised my hand, they called on me, I stood up, I said, hey, no, you didn't do the right thing. There were a lot of other solutions. People lost their homes, people lost their jobs. You let the whole bubble occur on your watch, and there were 10 other ways to deal with it that would have been incredibly fair. And you chose the one that, bailed out the guys who did it. And I would have proposed something different. And if you read my book, I've got my proposal in there in detail. Let's not go through it here because it's too long. But and as you can imagine, Geithner was taken aback, and he said, well, what you're proposing is Old Testament justice, an eye for an eye. And I was like, dude, this isn't, about justice. I mean, this is about just basic human fairness. And, and this isn't Old Testament. I'm not poking your eye out. I'm just suggesting to you that the people who committed the crime should be held responsible for it. Anyway, I got drowned out. They moved on to other questioners. It was very clear they didn't want to hear what I had to say, and that was fine. I expected nothing less, but I did make my point. And I had a lot of hateful stares at me. I had a lot of people glaring and taking snide remarks as I went out to coffee. But as I said in the book, there were a handful of people who came up to me and said, dude, That took fucking guts, man. And I agree with you. You're right. You're absolutely right. And they needed to hear it. So, so there's that. And I just figured, I'm just not going to let this stand. I mean, if somebody who knows what happened and knows it's wrong can't stand up and say it, in America and with freedom of speech, then what's the point, right? And so I said it. But, the impact is quite low in terms of their thinking, I'm sure.
So on that panel, let's get people up to speed in case they're just names flying over their head. Hank Paulson, he was at Goldman, I believe, during the time.
He was the CEO of Goldman, and he was the Treasury Secretary during the GFC.
Right.
And so he was the guy who initiated TARP, which is the Troubled Asset Relief Program, where they borrowed $700 billion, and he was on his knees in Washington, D.C., begging Nancy Pelosi to approve TARP. And by the way, the first time they put TARP out there, the Congress overwhelming, there was, thousands of phone calls to D.C., reject this. It's a bailout of the bankers. And the Congress overwhelmingly turned it down. And then days later, the stock market fell 8 or 9%, by memory, I could be off by a little bit, very rapidly, one of the largest falls ever. And, it was very clear that if they didn't do it, the economy was going to melt down. And so, all the financial types leaned on all the Congress people and said, you guys don't have a choice. You have to do this bailout, or else, the ATMs aren't going to work and everything's going to melt down. And that's, by the way, what the financial class has always done to rip us off. It's like they've got a gun to our head, print the damn money so we can benefit. If not, I'm going to blow your financial brains out, and yeah, the inflation will hurt you later, but you don't want to have your brains blown out now. So you say, fine, we'll print the money. That's the game that got started when we put in the Federal Reserve backstop in 1913. And that game has only gotten more and more extreme, and the numbers are larger and larger as we go forward. So yeah, and it led to all kinds of distortions. One of my favorites in the book, and I want to mention this, because it just blows my mind every time I read it. And it wasn't just me. This was documented by Matt Taibbi of Rolling Stone. When that whole thing went down, the wife of the chairman of Morgan Stanley and borrowed $200 million, okay, non-recourse from the Federal Reserve at a low interest rate in order to buy distressed and troubled assets. And so what that meant was that if those distressed and troubled assets recovered and became worth $300 or $400 million, she was going to make $100 to $200 million. And she had to put up some money, a few $1 million, but and if those troubled assets failed, she'd lose the few $1 million that she put up. But the $200 million that she borrowed, the Fed would cover it, right? So this is just blatant corruption. And this is all, I'm not making this up, this is all detailed in Matt Taibbi, a great investigative reporter, Rolling Stone interview. He called it the Real Housewives of Wall Street, because it was actually Morgan Stanley's chairman and wife, and there was another senior Morgan executive. So these two women borrowed $200 million from the Fed, with no financial background. It's just like, what?
Obvious.
This is the system we're running. You can't borrow $200 million from the Fed. I can't borrow $200 million. The average citizen wants to borrow money. They got to go to these loan sharks called the credit card companies that pay 25%. And I'm old enough to remember how back in the olden days there were usury laws, which prevented the credit card guys from charging more than 10 or 12%. So you couldn't get yourself into the debt hole that a lot of people have gotten into. And everyone says, well, they got to have that, so they take on riskier credits. Bullshit. Cap the interest rate at some fair level, and if the credit's too risky, then don't loan them the money. But instead, what they've allowed everybody to do is to get into a debt trap, just like the government's in a debt trap. And guess what? If you're in a debt trap, they own you. You do not have sovereignty anymore. You're a hamster on a treadmill, just trying to get that salary to pay that debt. And millions of student borrowers know it. Here's a good example. I don't agree with absolutely anything that Elizabeth Warren says, except one thing I will say I agree with her. She said, hang on a second, you mean to tell me we're charging 6% on student loans and we're lending money to Wall Street at ZERP at 25 basis points? Please explain to me why Wall Street can borrow at a lower rate than a student who represents the future of our country. She's got a point. She's really got a point. And the answer is that student doesn't have the lobbyists and the power and the money that Wall Street has to corrupt the system. So Anyway,
Oh,
enough of a rant. But
it's so
you hit on
disgusting.
you hit on the thesis of my whole book, and
Yeah.
God, I feel strongly about this shit, as you know.
Well, you brought up usury, and usury is a really interesting one. And in the same conversation here, we've already mentioned interest rates, and you were saying quite correctly that interest rates should be decided by the market.
Yeah, right.
The fact that there is an entity out there dictating to us what the interest rate is absolute complete nonsense. But
Totally.
when you look at how so usury laws, for those that aren't aware, usury is the exorbitant charge of interest on borrowed money. Now, if you look at our current system, everything is pure usury because the money you're borrowing didn't exist in the first place. You go to a bank to get some money as a loan, they just print that, they just loan you. The deposit is the loan. They deposit the money in your account. And then you have to pay interest back on money that didn't exist. So it doesn't matter if it's 0.5% and you think you got a great deal. It's usury. It's just so disgusting.
Yeah, no, yeah. When people understand the advantage that the banks have against the average human being, it's mind-boggling. It's just absolutely mind-boggling. And how as a banker you don't end up wealthy? I mean, it's impossible because they've got the game rigged in their favor. So
Yeah, man,
it's a nutty system. Oh, hang on one second. I gotta let my partner's dog out. Hang on, son.
Yep.
There you go. Let's go, sweetie. I have my business partner has a golden retriever.
Right.
He's visiting with me.
Gold.
Yeah.
How have your gold bug buddies watched you? They must have been watching you closely. I'm sure some of them have come with advice of. It comes from a place of love, right? I'm sure people
Yeah, it does, yeah.
People that respect you and have known you for a long time have probably been in your ear like, Larry, you're losing your fucking mind with this Bitcoin.
Absolutely. I've had all that. Yeah. And it does come from a place of love. And, I just try to explain them. And I understand their arguments. I mean, probably the one that I think the smartest ones have hung on to, okay, I will say, is that something this volatile can't be money. And I flip it and say, yeah, you're right. The dollar really is volatile. One Bitcoin is just one Bitcoin. Now, the dollar price of Bitcoin, well, that's all over the place. And you're right, the dollar is not money. But that's probably the last remaining argument to get knocked over with probably the smartest of my gold bug friends. The other arguments, one of the biggest ones, the other big ones that got knocked over, I think, relatively decisively, and although it could change, was the government's going to shut this thing down. And that was in 2018, 19, okay, that's, I hear you. But we got an ETF, we got a strategic reserve. Now, if Trump fails or if the red team fails in 3.5 years and blue team wins, they might take another crack at coming after crypto or coming after Bitcoin. Big taxes, taxing the off ramps, outlawing self custody. I mean, a lot of things. I think hopefully the horse is so far out of the barn they won't get anywhere on that. But I do worry about it a little bit.
Yeah, my worry is going back to Executive Order 6102.
That too.
If you read the order and some of the literature leading up to it, FDR was blaming and pointing at people and calling them hoarders, right? So that's what we are, right? We're hodlers, we're hoarders, and they could just pull the same narrative bullshit again.
Absolutely, and we're profiteers, and we're taking advantage of the existing beautiful fiat system and the Keynesian model. And by the way, they have some really nice honeypots now. I mean, you can be sure that if they called up Fidelity and they called up BlackRock and they called up the big ETF, pools and said, guys, the law has now changed. Send us those Bitcoin and cash all your customers out at the last Bitcoin price. They'd have to comply. I mean, it would be if it were the law of the land. Now, and the interesting thing there is it doesn't necessarily, I mean, I've had this discussion on other pods. I think it's an interesting discussion that in theory, the monetary policy of the country was determined by the Constitution, where Article 1, Section 8, gold and silver money, et cetera, et cetera. But in practice, executive, the chief executive, the president, has actually driven the monetary policy. Lincoln did it with greenbacks, which he shoved through. The Congress put in the Fed, but then Wilson approved it. But Roosevelt did things just kind of unilaterally, right? 6102, revalue gold, etc. And then Nixon did it again in 71. We're reneging on this promise to pay you gold for your dollars. And so, it does get a little scary. So Team Blue is now in charge. Hey, we think gold and Bitcoin are hurting the underlying safety and security of the dollar. We think that the capital gains on those two assets should be taxed at 60%. Furthermore, we even think we should seize them, and you can't own those assets. We're gonna bring them in. If the voters were all like the New York City voters who just voted for an avowed socialist, this guy went to Bowdoin, right? He's from an upper middle class background. He went to Bowdoin. It's one of the best small liberal arts schools in the country, and yet he's a socialist. Good luck with socialism working. That's not going to work. But when I look at an AOC or I look at a Bernie, and I think they're complaining about what's wrong, and they're right. They've got things are broken. Okay, they've got their solution's just wrong. Do you know what I mean? And so that's why it's really incumbent upon all of us Bitcoiners and other people and Austrians and so forth that we've got to educate these young people that yes, you're right. The system is broken. This isn't really capitalism; it's crony capitalism. But the system is broken, and we do need to fix the system. But the way we need to go is back to sound money, not socialism, because socialism is going to only make it worse, much worse and quickly. There are no examples of socialism working. You want to look at socialism, go to Venezuela, go to Cuba, go to Zimbabwe. Socialism just does not work. So, but they spin a nice tale, and I suspect in 4 years or 3.5 years that the blue team is going to be offering, stimmies and goodies and checks and forgiveness of debt and all the kinds of things to quote unquote help the people. All it's going to do is push up the price of groceries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's going to be an interesting one, mate, because obviously, Trump has 3 years, right, left at this point, and that's it. It's going to be, it might be same party, but it's going to certainly be different person. Unless, of course, they change the laws again. And you just never know. You just never know. This is the problem with centralized powers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, that is the problem with centralized powers. And this is why, as Bitcoiners, this is why self-custody really starts to become important, because, if they decide they want to take my FBTC, which is in my IRA account, because I haven't taken the time to move my IRA into self-directed, fine, that's a small piece of what I own. But the coins I own in, my head, who says I have to be an American? Who says, I haven't lost those keys? The Jason Lowry thesis that this thing makes individuals as powerful as an army with respect to protecting wealth. It's a pretty interesting thesis.
Yeah. All right, Larry, we've done the past and we've touched on what's going on right now. You kind of said something about the future, that you're going to start pulling back and enjoying retirement. But what are you working on at the moment in Bitcoin? You still managing a fund?
Yeah, so I still have a fund that has a piece of its Bitcoin. It was originally a gold and silver mining stock fund, and still is. And all my investors are relying on me to deliver them good results, and I'm going to do that. I believe it has a slice of Bitcoin, about as much as I could justify. And even when I did that, some of them left me and said, "Well, I'm not doing that if you're doing Bitcoin." I understand that. And I will be wrapping that up sometime in the next several years as this gold stock bull kind of continues. I think I'll be in a position to say, hey, everybody's made good money and time to unwind that. I'm involved with the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund, which is James Lavish, David Foley, Mark Moss, myself, and I'm not really active there. I'm more of an advisor, and they're doing a lot of very interesting Bitcoin venture deals. Are doing some of these treasury companies where we get in cheap before they do their IPO, etc. I'm trying to promote the book. I think, to me, look, the book's been successful. I'm approaching 35,000 copies sold, which is great. I've been told that's a big number for a new book self-published on Amazon. It's been out 5 months or something. But, to me, what I really hope, Prince, is I really want to jump the chasm into widespread adoption. You know what I mean? I mean, there are 300 million people in the United States. I mean, Morgan Housel sold 6 million copies of The Psychology of Money. I mean, you know, and so my dream is that, you know, I don't know, Elon or you know, Tucker or Rogan or, you know, Jack Mahler. I mean, just that some high level people who have a big audience read it and go, oh my God, this is something everybody's got to read. And we, you know, it gets viral. It gets really viral. And we got, you know, thousands of people reading it and millions of people aware of it. And we truly get a sound money army, you know, marching around trying to fix this broken system, voting for guys like Thomas Massey, et cetera. So that's kind of, you know, and I will do anything I can to advance that cause in the next few years. I mean, that's why I'm doing pods, and I'll go to events that I think push that forward. But and then after that, I tend to kind of slow down and you know, just not be as involved. And my wife is, she claims, she at one point in this whole process, she said, you know, I feel like a book widow. Because there was a time when I wrote it, in the 6 months that I wrote it, I was up at 5 a.m. and I pretty much spent all day writing it. And I was ignoring a lot of other stuff, and I don't want to do that anymore. So I'll be doing other things with my family. So
Yeah, it gets you, doesn't it? Once you start down these rabbit holes and a new project, yeah, it's
right. I mean, we've
grabs
all
you.
been there. Everybody in Bitcoin has been there, where you're just flat out and it's absorbing all you got, and that's great, but you can't do that forever. You know.
Another thing that you tweet about, which I don't know, I don't think I've ever heard you talk about on a podcast, is your fitness regime, your love of your love of CrossFit.
Yeah.
So what's how long you been doing that, and what keeps you going back for the torture?
Yeah, it is torture at times. But it's a short form of torture. It's generally 15 minutes or less. So I started this over 10 years ago, probably approaching 15 years ago. I don't know the exact date, but anyway. And there's a book I highly recommend. So if you're 50 years old and you haven't read Younger Next Year by Crowley, you need to read this book. Okay, Younger Next Year. It's a seminal book. It's really important. And what it talks about is how when you get to be 50, you know, you really start to age more rapidly. And if you do not commit to a regime of health and exercise, the outcome, it's when you turn 75, say, pick a number, or 80, whatever, you know, if you've committed to a healthy lifestyle, you're going to look one way. And if you haven't, you're going to look another. And the difference is going to be really substantial. And so, you know, you've got to do the best you can to you know, change your mindset. Men particularly have a mindset of got to work and earn money and provide for my family. And that's their highest priority, you know, as you're young and you're growing and you're thinking, okay, that's what I got to do. But when you get to be 50, you got to kind of shift your mindset a little bit. Say, my number one priority is to keep myself healthy so that I'm healthy at 80 or 90. You know, I mean, we've all seen 70, 80, 90-year-olds who are very unhealthy. And the difference in your lifestyle is huge. So what it requires is kind of a commitment to every day doing something that's related to fitness. Now, when I started down that road, I started researching it, and I discovered that, you know, like everything else, I'm a type A. I thought, well, okay, I want to get fit. Let's get extremely fit. Well, I looked at what Navy SEALs do, and Navy SEALs were doing CrossFit. And so I went to this Navy SEAL training program run by this guy named Mark Devine. It was really cool. He beat the shit out of me. But it got me kind of into CrossFit. And what you know, CrossFit is the unique insight related to CrossFit is that if you can push yourself to your max for a very brief period of time, you don't have to do it for long. The body remembers that, and it triggers a bunch of hormones. And so think back to the days when we were running around with spears and animals were trying to kill us. Tigers were trying. You didn't have to be strong all the time, but you had to be incredibly strong for short sprints. And so it's called high intensity interval training. And so CrossFit is like you go all out for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 15 minutes. You go as hard as you possibly can, and then you fall on the ground like a pile of sweat. And it kind of sucks when you're doing it, to be frank. Although, you know, as my original coach said, you know, it's like holding your head underwater. Eventually, you kind of get used to it, and you do. Eventually, it's just like, okay, I know this is going to suck, but I'm just going to do it. But when you go to 100%, you're going to, you know, human growth hormone, testosterone, you're going to fire a bunch of hormones that you just can't get by going out and jogging. I mean, jogging for an hour is great, and it's going to help build your cardio base, and that's a great form of exercise, but it's not the same as 100% effort for a brief period. And so to me, that's the magic of HIIT and CrossFit. And, you know, I mean, famous people do it. I mean, I'm always amused. I've listened to a lot of stuff by Mick Jagger, who's kind of a hero of mine. He's a cool guy. And he's doing it. He's doing CrossFit. You know, I mean, he says, this is the only way I can stay in shape to do these tours at this age. And, you know, God knows how, you know, how his bandmates are doing it. I don't get it, but they're doing it. So anyway, yeah, I'm, and so I, you know, probably somewhat, I don't know. I post my workouts just to kind of say, hey, look, this is what is possible to do as a 68-year-old. You know, doesn't matter where you start. You can get to a point where, you know, you're fit and healthy no matter what your age is. And I just think it's another form of proof of work. And I got into it. I think your daughter asked me what was the roughest time of my period, worst investment. Well, it's gold in 2015. That was about the time I got into it. So it was about, I was into it a little before that, but that was when I really ramped it up. So that's 10 years ago now. And, you know, I just figured, shit, I got to be around to see the end of this game. And if I'm going to do that, I got to be really fit to make it to 70, 80, 90. My dad died when he was 73, and I don't want that to happen. So, and I really want to see a Bitcoin-driven world. And so, you know, I'm kind of aiming for 90. I don't know if that's realistic. If cancer doesn't come in the picture, I hope I can get there. So.
Yeah, you'll make it, mate. Come on, aim for
I hope
100.
so.
We need you around.
So. Yeah, well, I'm hoping for that too. But you know, I think my observation from watching those around me age is that after 90, you're often getting close to being on borrowed time. So.
I go to I found the local gym here at the rugby club, and I go along to that, and I'm inspired by the people. I was working out with a 58-year-old guy yesterday, so he's only 10 years older than me, but there's a guy there that's 90. He comes along to the gym.
Right.
And there's other guys like in their 70s, in their 80s, and it's like, right, you guys are my inspiration.
Well, that's right. And isn't it, I mean, as you look at those guys, aren't some of them really fit? And you're like, wow, that's great. You know, I mean, you can do it. I mean, the difference between a fit 70-year-old or a fit 80-year-old and an unfit, I mean, it's like night and day. But there really is no shortcut. And the other thing I would say that's really important is it's not about measuring it. It's not about performance. So many people get in their head and they're like, well, I'm no good. I'm not going to do this. No, no, no. There's only one prerequisite for this thing, and that's to keep walking through the fucking door. Okay? In other words, that's what my first CrossFit coach told me. I said, I'm out of shape. I was fat when I went in there. I was really out of shape. I said, I'm not sure I can do this. He said, yes, you can. He said, the only thing you got to do is you got to walk through that fucking door 5 days a week and do the best you can, even if it's nothing or something really light. You'll do something because that something will move the needle a little bit. And then what happens is as the needle starts to move, you start to feel good. Say, gosh, I could do a little more. And before you know, it's like a flywheel, right? And you get it going, and pretty soon you're doing stuff you didn't even think you could ever do. So highly recommend it. If you're 40, 50 years old, you got to shift your mindset. I mean, 20s and 30s, you're on free time. You know, your body's strong. You can screw around, do whatever. I mean, the other thing that related to that I did was in my mid-30s, I stopped drinking, and that's helped a lot. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Good for you.
It's poison. It's really, as Max says, it's a shit coin. Alcohol is a shit coin. And Max, Max says everyone knows he's been in AA and he was an alcoholic, and he hasn't same age. He quit too.
Yeah.
And I probably would have, that's where I would have gone if I hadn't quit. And I'm glad I did.
Well, good for you, mate. Yeah. All right, Larry, let's wrap it up because what are we now? Yeah, hour and 10 minutes. I've got to hit you with the last question.
Sure.
If you had one last orange pill left to give to somebody, who would you give that to and why?
I'd probably give it to Elon. And not because I'm a lover of all things Elon. I'm not. I mean, he's got some great qualities and he's flawed in other ways. But he's very, very influential. And he's very, very well known. And he's probably got more Twitter followers than anybody else. And I think he's so close to fully understanding it. And I think if he were to fully understand it and to embrace it in his businesses and to kind of adopt a sailor-like strategy, boy, it would just be, it would force Apple and all these other corporations to think about it. And I think it would move the world. So I think he would be a very highly leveraged, orange pill if, based on the platform and the followers and that he could connect with. So I'm pretty sure I'd give it to him.
All right. Well, the there is no wrong answer, so don't sweat.
Yeah.
It's
I'd be curious. I mean, if same question to you in the same circumstances, who would you give it to?
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on this one a lot. I used to say Greta. I would like to have given it to Greta, so
Yeah.
she can undo the damage that she's done with all of the climate fear mongering to young teenage kids. Uh, that would, yeah. But now I lean more towards just keeping it as close as I possibly can. My parents, for example, I've given them the books. I've not given them your one yet, but they've had others, and they come back with questions. They've watched Joe Bryan's "What's the Problem," and then they come back with questions. So it's just a slow burn, and yeah, I mean everybody gets there eventually, and we all know it's inevitable. This mindset shift that we have to go through, because if you don't, then what's the alternative? The alternative is just to carry on living in
Yeah.
this world where you are being manipulated,
Yeah.
and there is no economic signal, and you can't make true decisions, and you're going to get pulled into all kinds of wrong areas of life, and end up living a life that you were never intended to live. Like because everything is downstream of money, as you know, as you've explained in your book, as Seb
Yeah.
explains Seb's book, The Hidden Cost of Money. That's another great one.
Fabulous book. I love Seb's book. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Joe Bryan, fabulous. I mean, he just put his his video. He turned it into a free ebook too, and it was just out. I just retweeted it. It's highly recommended. So, yeah. I mean, look, it's it's just one soul at a time, right? I mean, I got a nice DM the other day. It's on my thread on Twitter where a young kid out in LA, said, "Hey, I saw you on Robert's show, and I really appreciate what you're doing, and feel like you want to send me a book. The people I live with could definitely use it." And he's in a rough area of LA, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm sending you a box. Spread them around." I mean, because this is, look, it's a good idea, and good ideas spread, mouth to mouth, hand to hand, friend to friend. Hey, have you read this yet? Have you thought about this? I mean, and but it's happening. It's coming along.
I forgot to ask, where will you be signing more copies? Have you got anything lined
Yeah,
up?
that's great. That's a very good question. So books, events, I know I'm not going to be going to the bigger shows as much anymore, if at all. There's a show down in Dallas that I was invited to by Robert Kiyosaki called Limitless. It's late July, early August. So I have a bunch of books there, and I will be signing, and I think I'm on a panel there. There's a show up in Montreal in Canada. I'm not sure the exact dates. You can Google Bitcoin Canada, Montreal. I want to say it's October-ish kind of time frame. And so I will go to that. I'll be signing books there. I haven't committed to any other shows, but I might. I don't know what else is coming up. I don't know if I'll go to Prague next year. I know when Madeira gets thrown again, I'll definitely go back to that.
That's 2028. People, put it in your diary. Yeah,
Little
March
ways,
2028.
little ways out, but I'm definitely going to that. And
Yeah, us too.
yeah, so on Twitter I always talk about where I'm going, what shows I'm going to.
So follow Larry on Twitter, everybody, and reach out in his DMs if you have any questions.
Yeah. Really great talking to you, Prince. It's been a long time since that discussion about Sam Bankman-Fried. The years they just slide by quickly, don't they?
They certainly do, mate. They certainly do. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks for everything you have done in the past and continue to do for Bitcoin.
Well, thank you for helping spread the word for your pod and your shows. I love them. They're excellent. And when you get this done, let me know, and I'll retweet it to those folks who follow me so we can spread the word.
Will do. Thanks, Larry. Have a good day.
You too. Take care.
Well, there you go, everybody. Thank you for listening, and thank you, Larry, for coming on the show. We did do an episode actually way back with a mutual friend of ours, Greg Foss, and we did that live in Madeira. You can go and find that if you just search the Once Bitten podcast. You will find that, just search Lawrence Lepard or Greg Foss. And there's a video version up on the YouTube channel. You can go and find the YouTube channel. I still do have the YouTube channel going, and the link is in the show notes. But like I said at the beginning of the show here, moving completely towards Fountain App. They are hosting now the audio, and the video has now dropped. So Fountain App, you can watch the video version of this as well, if that's what you prefer to do. The video version is only on the mobile app for now. And if you're not switching, if you're a Bitcoiner and you're not switching your listening habits and your viewing habits away from these walled gardens of Spotify and Apple Pods, then you're doing it all wrong, because Fountain app has been built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners. Download the app, you'll have a wallet all lined up for you. You can fund that with some sats via your own Lightning wallet, and join the fun. And get over and listen to other podcasts. Go and listen to Bitcoin because Bitcoin is brought to you by None Your Business. Who's None Your Business? David Bennett has been in Bitcoin longer than most people. And he flies under the radar because he's humble AF. He just does his thing. He gets the news that you can use every single day. He's reading out Bitcoin articles. And look, I love me some Guy Swan on Bitcoin Audible. I do. But Dave is bringing you like a different perspective. And it's definitely some Bitcoin content that if you've not been exposed to before, you probably should be. I'll just say that. So Bitcoin go listen to it on Fountain app. Stream Dave some sats. He helps you find Bitcoiners that are selling goods and services. He's started something called the Circle P, and you can go find people over there that are, selling incredible stuff for Bitcoin. So you can spend your sats and you can support this growing economy. Across this side of the pond, we have a young man by the name of Chief Monkey. He has started plebeian.market, where you can, if you've got goods and services you want to sell for Bitcoin, you just need to list on plebeian.market and you're away. You are good to go. You will find people. Obviously, you're not going to open up a ton of sales straight away. This is a long fuse. We are, this isn't going to happen in a day. Parker Lewis, gradually, then suddenly. And if you've not read that book, you 100% should do. And you should buy that with sats from the Safe House, which is Saifedean Ammous's publishing house. And if you want to listen to some of those chapters, deep dives into those chapters, just go back again. Go to the Once Bitten podcast on the Fountain app. See all episodes. Search Parker Lewis. You will find we've done 3 or 4 chapters of his book. You'll find it very interesting. Final shield for all of the companies out there that are serving the Bitcoin community. And again, look, do your own research. I don't know which country you are listening from. I do not know where your best place is to go and buy Bitcoin. All I want you to understand is you have to buy Bitcoin peer-to-peer or from a Bitcoin-only company. If you can't find peer-to-peer, join Orange Pill app first. Go find people as close to you as you possibly can. Join in the local meetups. Get to the local conferences, wherever they are. Find your tribe. Don't be that lonely Bitcoiner anymore. This is time to step forward and start making Bitcoin a medium of exchange. So that's the first thing. If you can't find peer-to-peer, get to a trusted source. Find the Bitcoin-only companies in your jurisdiction. Across Europe, you have Relay, relai.ch/bitten. Across the pond, you have swanbitcoin.com/bitten. Take self-custody. Bitbox. Like I said at the beginning of the show, the Bitbox 02 is a Bitcoin-only hardware wallet. They've been around for many years in the space. You can go straight to their website, hit the link in the show notes. They have open source software on their devices, and they're going to be launching something new very soon. So they're also going to be in Helsinki. Come along to Helsinki. Come and speak to the guys. Come and listen to them. The CEO is going to be there. So that's bitbox.swiss/bitten. Here we are out of music again. Riga is literally kicking off at the time that you are listening to this. Most likely you've perhaps missed it. If you haven't, if you want to FOMO in, get across to Riga. Use the code BITTEN at checkout. Hit the link in the show notes. You'll get 10% off. Come to Helsinki. That's BTC Hell. Again, this is the first time this is being run. It's going to be a great event. They're expecting anywhere between 750 to 1,000 guests to turn up. A complete mix of noobs and OGs all in one place, having fun, learning from each other. Get across to one of these conferences. You have the Bitcoin Balkans coming up in October as well. Like I say all the time, code BITTEN, BITTEN. If you can't get a discount to one of these conferences, let me know. Then I can reach out, and perhaps they will be able to offer you one, and to the listeners of the Once Bitten podcast. I think I've said it all. Bubble, are you listening to your podcast, your 40 hours per week? Are you using bubble.fm, BUBBL.fm to curate all of your topics that you want to listen to get up to speed? You should be. You can go back and listen to an episode I did with Kaz, K-A-Z. Again, I'm going to tell you what. Fountain app. Go to shows. Once Bitten podcast. See all episodes. Search Kaz. You will find it. I think I'm done, guys. I'll catch you on the next show. If you're going to be in Riga or Helsinki, come tap me on the shoulder. Say hi. I will be selling and signing books. That's Choose Life. If you're not going to be there, you can go find Choose Life on bitcoinbook.shop/bitten and use the code BITTEN at checkout for 10% discount. Catch you on the next show, guys. Thank you so much for listening.
Just
Take care.
low-key dropped a playbook to sell gold and buy Bitcoin, and nobody's talking about it. Okay, this is not from a Bitcoin bro on Twitter. This is from the Federal Reserve, and they just published a research note that casually explains how a country can tap gains on its gold reserves without selling an ounce. And right after that, they mention Bitcoin. Not a joke, not a rumor, it's right there. Translation, the US government just laid out a stealth playbook. Revalue gold, unlock capital, use that capital to stack Bitcoin. This is how you pivot the financial system without admitting that you're doing it. Sailor's been screaming it. Senator Loomis proposed it. Now, it's in Fed literature. And if you're not paying attention, you're gonna miss the greatest wealth transfer of our lifetime. Welcome back, I'm Sophie, and by the end of the show today, you'll understand why 250K Bitcoin isn't optimistic, it's conservative. Send it!
We hold them at about a 1974 value, which was, I don't know, $46 an ounce or some such thing, and then bring them to market value and then use that to buy Bitcoin.
Sell all the U.S. gold, buy Bitcoin, then the trade is free because you could buy 5 million Bitcoin for the cost of the gold. You will demonetize the entire gold asset class, and our enemies hold gold in their banks, so their assets would go to zero. Our assets would go to $100 trillion, and we would control the world's reserve capital network as well as the world's reserve currency network.
Could you sell some of the gold in Fort Knox to buy Bitcoin? Can we? Is that possible?
Well, if it's budget neutral and doesn't cost the taxpayer a dime,
You're kind of exchanging one for the other.
We'll see whatever creative ideas that we can come up with. And, like I said, with all the interagency working group actors that will convene in these meetings, I mean, we're going to hear some tremendous ideas about how we could do it. I just don't want to box us in yet to what that actually looks like because I want to be able to hear from everybody.
Okay, let's actually talk about this Federal Reserve bombshell because the headlines aren't doing it justice. This is from their latest note. Several countries have unlocked billions by revaluating their gold reserves without selling a single ounce. This mechanism has been discussed in the context of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. Translation, here's how we could tap into gold to stack more Bitcoin if we needed to. And the gold bugs, they're flipping. ECR Minerals, a gold mining company, just announced they're putting Bitcoin on the balance sheet. Think about that. The gold bugs are flipping. The Fed is hinting. The game is changing. And someone better check on Peter Schiff.
Peter, wake up.
Now here's where things get real interesting. Arthur Hayes just laid down one of the most important economic breakdowns we've seen in years. And it's not some wild prediction, it's math. He says there's only one path left for the system: print money or collapse. Let's walk through it. The US mortgage system, led by Fannie and Freddie, needs about $5 trillion just to stay solvent. Now add in regional bank bailouts, shadow banking risks, commercial real estate defaults, and you're staring down the barrel of $9 trillion in required liquidity.
How they're going to print, I think, in the realm of $9 trillion-ish between now and that period of time. And that is, Fannie and Freddie, the government support entities that are allowed to create mortgages in the U.S. Yeah. They will print $5 trillion. You will have probably up to $1 trillion purchased by the banking system due to supplemental leverage ratio exemptions and purchasing things that the foreigners are selling. And I think the banks are going to because they now don't have to hold all this equity capital against their treasury book.
Yeah.
They can lend more into the real American economy. And so you're going to see the amount of loans going to manufacturing firms increase, which is, again, that's an increase in credit, and that will make its way into crypto as well.
Again, this isn't speculation. This is how math works. If growth doesn't go up exponentially, the debt pyramid cracks. And while America's trying to plug that hole, capital is leaving. Asian countries, Korea, Taiwan, Singapore are repatriating dollars back home. Hayes' takeaway? When foreign buyers vanish, the Fed becomes the buyer of everything. Stocks, bonds, housing. Sound familiar? That's QE on steroids. That's how you get 250K Bitcoin and then some.
Well, if foreign money went into the U.S. because the U.S. markets have been the best performing, whether it's stocks, bonds, or real estate. And if that money is leaving and it's going to go back into their local markets, then the U.S. markets don't do so well. And maybe it's better to own Taiwanese stocks or Indonesian stocks or Thai stocks or all these other emerging market countries who are basically going to say, okay, we're forced to repatriate this money back on shore. Our currencies appreciate. Our consumer gets wealthier because now they can purchase more things, and maybe people want to build business domestically to service that economy.
Hayes calls this the death spiral of traditional assets. Boomers are retiring. They need to sell stocks and real estate for cash. But the buyers? Millennials who don't want inflated assets. They want mobility, freedom, Bitcoin. So what happens? The government becomes the buyer of last resort. Again, which means more printing, more inflation, and the real intergenerational wealth transfer happens via inflation, not inheritance.
Yeah, for crypto, right? Or any other types of digital assets, because the boomers have stocks to sell. Does anyone want these stocks? Maybe to some extent. Do they want that big suburban house or whatever they have, or apartment in the city? I don't know. So I think there's going to be a massive issue in terms of if the younger generation wants to buy things that the older generation is selling, and they need to sell those things to fund their retirement. How does that square? Are they going to increase taxes because the asset prices of things the boomers own and went down and they can't afford their retirement? So then they're going to tax the young more to pay for their retirement. And are the young going to accept that? I don't know.
What would you guess?
I think there's going to be a lot of intergenerational conflict. I don't know the outcome of it. But there could be money printing at the end of the day, right? Because it's a very easy way for the government to solve this problem.
Here's Hayes' mic drop. Assets that need money printing will do it. Assets that don't will absorb it. Let that sink in. Bitcoin doesn't need support. It is support. It's the hard cap. The signal in the noise. Hayes calls $250K Bitcoin conservative in this environment. Not a fantasy, a floor.
The 250 by end of the year. Is that still your timeline, or have you changed
so I
things
think
since?
that we get to 250,000 by the end of the year. It'll be bumpy along the way, obviously, but that's sort of my end of year price target. And then $1 million Bitcoin is what I just got off stage talking about how they're going to print, I think, in the realm of $9 trillion-ish between now and that period of time. And that is, Fannie and Freddie, the government.
And if that wasn't enough, Donald J. Trump just decided to turbocharge it. This week, he's signing an executive order to allow Bitcoin into 401k retirement plans. That's $7.7 trillion in American retirement accounts now legally allowed to allocate to Bitcoin.
Well, I will say very clearly, we want as much Bitcoin as we can possibly get. We have to do this in budget neutral ways that don't cost a taxpayer a dime, but there are countless ways in which we can do it. There can be hundreds of different ways we do this, if not thousands. And so we talked about this in different verticals, whether it be like through mining activity, whether it be through bit bonds. I mean, there's tons of creative things
like
we can
taxes
do.
in Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, it's endless. And so people ask me to give like clear examples, and the reason I don't want to tell you what we're going to do first yet is because I really don't want to poison the well. We want to do something that's going to be the most effective in the United States. And so when we're ready to announce that, which I'm sure we will be in short order, I think that this community will be extremely pleased.
Wall Street, boomers, family offices, pension funds. They've all been waiting for this green light. Now it's here, and the supply of Bitcoin isn't getting any bigger. You do the math. Quick legal update that should freak you all out a little bit. We have an update on the Tornado Cash case.
Hi, everybody. This is David. We have a verdict in USA v. Storm. It is a mixed verdict. It's really complicated, and there's a lot to talk about, but generally it is good news. On counts 1 and 3 against Roman, the conspiracy to commit money laundering and to violate sanctions, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict. On those charges, we essentially have a mistrial. On the second charge, conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money transmission business, we do have a guilty verdict. However, that charge has been forked and changed a bit. Also, the maximum sentence there is 5 years. Additionally, there was a move by the prosecution to remand Roman to state custody. That was overturned, or that was denied. So Roman will be free on bail while the appeals process goes on and until sentencing. Judge Fila emphasized that there was a great deal of fighting left to do before we get to sentencing. We will obviously continue to cover that. But split decision, no unanimous verdict on charges 1 and 3, guilty verdict on charge 2, the MTV charge. We will be filling in on that as we move forward. Thanks everybody for paying attention.
Roman Storm, developer of Tornado Cash, was just found guilty of operating an unlicensed money transmission business. Not money laundering, not sanctions evasion, just building an open source code. Roman Storm says, this isn't over, we're fighting. This isn't just about Tornado, this is about all open source development, privacy, and the precedent it sets for Bitcoiners. If you build a tool that protects financial privacy, they might just call it a crime. So while the government buys Bitcoin, they're still trying to control how you use it. That's why self-custody isn't optional anymore. It's survival. And if you're serious about privacy and sovereignty, you need to talk to our friends at the Bitcoin Way. They don't just help you set up a wallet, they help you build a fortress. Whether it's multi-sig, inheritance planning, or total off-grid setups, they've got the tools and the mindset to make you ungovernable. Visit thebitcoinway.com and tell them Simply Bitcoin sent you. You can schedule a free 30-minute consultation using that link below in the show notes. And once you've secured your Bitcoin, here's how to make it work for you without selling a single sat. Life comes at you fast, and if you ever needed to tap into your Bitcoin's value without selling it, boom, you're holding pristine collateral. That's where Ledin comes in. Ledin has funded over $10 billion in Bitcoin-backed loans since 2018. No monthly payments, no penalties, just pure flexibility. You control your loan, you control your Bitcoin. Collateral is never lent out to generate interest. And every 6 months, proof of reserves. It's simple. If you need cash but don't want to sell your precious corn, Ledin has your back. Check out Ledin Bitcoin-backed loans done right. Go to learn.ledin.io/simply. Simply Bitcoin clients get 0.25% off their first loan. Bullish signal on the macro front. The odds of a rate cut in September are now 93.2%. And guess what Q4 usually brings?
I believe Bitcoin is a one-way street. And what that means is that you and I, we, the people, we need Bitcoin. In order to secure our future, we need it. But the same is for businesses. Businesses also should have savings at Treasury, and they also need to put that into Bitcoin to push that value into the future, as do corporations and as do governments. Governments also have savings, and they also need to preserve that. But as much as the corporations and the governments need Bitcoin, Bitcoin doesn't need them. Bitcoin doesn't need the governments to succeed, right? We've already done that in spite of it. So every company, to the point you're making, every company, every Mag 7 company, any company that wants to exist into the future is going to have to adopt Bitcoin. How much longer can they hold out? I would imagine by the end of this decade, in the next 5 years, the majority of them will have come over. I believe that we're going into a parabolic phase of Bitcoin. And a little bit of a contrarian take I would have is that while everybody's expecting the CAGR, the compounded annual growth rate of Bitcoin, to continue to diminish because of the law of large numbers, I think there's a possibility we could see the CAGR actually start to accelerate again for a bit as we go through this parabolic phase. Everyone's going to realize this by the end of the decade. We haven't jumped into the macro side, but if you look at what Elon Musk said when he left the government, when he left Doge, if you look at the pivot that Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, has made, Trump has said, it's now, there's no cutting, there's no austerity coming, it is only grow our way out. That means let inflation rip. So we'll see two things happen. We'll see inflation rip and Bitcoin rip at the same time, and every Mag 7 is going to see this and come around.
You better buckle up. Even Janet is calling for Jay Powell to fire up the money printer.
I think that perhaps the most recent data strengthens the case for some rate cut going forward. Of course, the markets have long expected there to be some rate cuts. It's, of course, contingent on the data continuing to show that inflation's under control. And
let's run it back. The Fed just told you how to sell gold to buy Bitcoin. Arthur Hayes says $9 trillion in money printing is incoming. Trump just opened 401ks to Bitcoin. The legal system is still trying to attack privacy, and the market is coiling for a breakout. If you're not prepared for this, you're gonna miss out on the biggest money transition of our lifetime. Take the hint. Take the high ground. And for the love of Satoshi, hold your own keys. And join us at Mining Disrupt 2025. It's only months away, the biggest Bitcoin mining conference and expo in the world. They're heading to Dallas, Texas, November 11th through the 13th. Meet the legends building the hash power revolution. From sovereign mining to AI plus Bitcoin integration, this is where the next wave of Bitcoin history is being written. Grab those tickets today. Come and see the Simply Bitcoin team on the news desk, and don't forget to use the promo code SimplyBitcoin for 20% off. Let us know what you think below. Like, subscribe, comment gold is dead to piss Peter Schiff off, and hit the bell so YouTube doesn't shadow ban us again. And so you can stay up to date with the peaceful revolution. Love you guys. Catch you next time. Peace.
If you prefer to go down with the ship,
welcome back to the Rock Paper Bitcoin podcast. It's me, your very best friend on the internet, Business Cat. Welcome to episode 69. You know, there's no one we'd rather 69 with than you. In fact, and if it wasn't going to be you, then it would be with Boomer, with Rod, and with Dick. A very special 69. But if you're enjoying this content that Fundamentals and I are putting out there into the universe, you can support us by listening with any Podcasting 2.0 enabled application. Something like Fountain, something like Podverse, it's up to you. Pick a sat amount per minute listened and zap it our direction. You can leave us a comment with a boostagram, jump in our Telegram, we want to hear from you. Buy a t-shirt. That's new. But there's some fun ones on there. The link's in the show notes. Buy Fundamentals book. That link is in the show notes too. That's it. Let's get into the show.
That's my answer. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe this is the last special episode until we hit 420, which at our rate will be 2140 when blocks start printing. But
oh God. Okay.
Welcome, everybody, to a very special episode of Rock, Paper, Bitcoin. We're kicking off Rock, Paper, Bitcoin Summer, and we have just a very special episode here with our best friends, our very best friends on the internet. Before we introduce anybody and before we start, I'm going to be a little bit of a selfish dick and plug my book. It's going great. I'm really psyched. I'm actually about to do a new edit of it, and there'll be a new version.
What's your book called?
My book is called Bitcoin for Institutions. And, you know...
What's the easiest way to get it?
The easiest way to get it is on the Zeus Pay site, which is in the show notes. And so graciously in the show notes of any Bugle episode that's been put out recently. So we'll thank those guys for that.
You chose hard mode, so the easiest way to get your book is to Hoka Lightning Payment Works.
Sorry, say that again.
The easiest way to get your book is to rely on the user experience of Lightning Network, going through all the way. That's bold. That's bold. That's the pioneer shit.
Yeah, that's right. But if you want to really be technical about it, the transaction itself is happening at the eCash level so that it actually works every time.
All right, Paper Bitcoin.
That's
right.
right.
Eating up, baby.
And it's really, since the book is about how to properly paper Bitcoin, right? We're trying to teach the Rothschilds how to be like Rothbards. It's only fitting that the easiest way to buy the book is through paper Bitcoin.
It's also available on Amazon if you want to pay with fiat.
It is also available on Amazon at a hefty fiat surcharge.
So who do we have in the chat with us? Obviously, people who are listening, they're gonna know because it's gonna be in the title. But who's in the room with us right now?
All right, announce yourself. So, okay, we have Boomer, first time Rock Paper Bitcoin guest, Boomer, and we should tell the audience Boomer's such a good friend of the show. He listens to the show more than any of us do. And
69-time listener though.
Oh hell yeah! And Boomer really deserves his own episode, and we'll probably give it to him one of these days. But Boomer,
yeah,
welcome.
this is just a teaser for you because you have a hard out at some point. But yeah, you're gonna get a full episode by yourself at some point. Just audience FYI. So yeah, welcome.
Right? Like he'll correct us if we say something about an episode that was wrong. Like, he's a super fan.
Yeah. Like I've been listening literally since the beginning. Like I went back, the guys asked me to come on here last week, so I went back and I listened to the high hash rate episodes with Business Cat. That's the first time. That's how I got exposed to it, right? And then listened to the first episode. Honestly, dude, the first one was kind of mid. It was just okay, and it was just like, okay, this is like
you're
some
very
guy
kind to have gone back and listened to that stuff.
I disagree personally.
No, the first one was fine. He was just like, oh, this is like some guy, he's a tech guy into Bitcoin. Interesting story about your past and stuff. It was cool. It was not, it was not super memorable. It was just okay. But your second episode on the high hash rate, you absolutely destroyed it. Like, it was like one of their best episodes, I think. Like I've listened to, I think, all of them.
Maybe I didn't hear this first one. Maybe I've only heard the second one. And
the second one is killer. And the second one, like, you had just recorded a few episodes with fundamentals at this point. Like, at this point, like, Rock Paper Bitcoin probably had 10 listeners when you went on that.
We've had a real slow run up. So yeah, that could have been like 6 months after we had started 10 listeners.
Yeah.
Speaking
of I've been around ever since then. Like, I listened to that episode and I realized, oh yeah, this guy Business Cat, he's one of mine. Like the conspiracy theories, the story. Like, he's definitely my crew. And then I started listening to Rock Paper Bitcoin, and then the guy that he's doing the podcast with is someone who's basically my age, very similar interest as me, similar career. So it just kind of made sense that, you guys become like one of my top podcasts, because it's just like you guys kind of blend two parts of my personality, kind of.
When you first hear Business Cat, you understand the name. You're like, this guy means business.
Yeah, exactly.
So you just heard the voice of Rod Palmer. And
yeah, well, that's very very kind, guys. Who else we have with us?
We've got our boys from the Bugle, Rod Palmer and Richard Gracer, our two very closest friends. We love those guys. So glad you guys are here. You guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Yeah, I'm Rod Palmer.
Simultaneously.
I'm Richard Gracer.
So awesome. Now, we did mention high hash rate. It's like, dude, we can't do anything without mentioning that show. Probably the GOAT, in my opinion. I'll never forget it. But where the fuck are those guys? We did invite them. We invited both Dan and Mike to come on this. We got a hard yes from Mike, and he's gone. He's not here. So
he's
not everybody has what it takes to be a Bitcoin podcaster. And those guys, great show. I've listened to most of their episodes. Great show, but it's a marathon, not a sprint. And they only made it to a little over 100 episodes, and they threw in the towel.
Kind of, and we can speculate as to whose fault that all is, but I just wanted to say, for completion, we didn't get a hard yes or a hard no from Dan, but we're hoping that he decides to click the link and pop in at some point.
Yeah, we've got space. But yeah, the high hash rate had a very similar. So Boomer's describing like just discovering me on high hash rate. High hash rate. I think I was one of the earlier listeners to high hash rate, and it spoke to me. It was like immediately. I was like, oh yeah, this is a super high signal podcast. Exactly what I'm looking for. And like these people are speaking. Like, whenever you run into content creators who are speaking just the truth as they see it, it's immediately obvious. Like these are people that have no agenda. They're just looking to have conversations. And yeah, it spoke to me early on. And like also like the podcasting 2.0 was like I think High Hash Rate was one of the earlier podcasts that I listened to that was utilizing podcasting 2.0, and that really puts the podcasters in a much more direct conversation with the listeners than has ever been available before. And I feel like, Boomer, that's how we've been able to connect to you so much, is that like podcasting 2.0 has really changed the podcasting game if you're taking advantage of it, and like both for the listener side and the content creator side. And so yeah, like this kind of like this episode 69 right now is a production because of we were able to connect with all of our audience and our fans through podcasting 2.0. So I got to give it to Adam Curry. Like, this is great. Super innovation.
Hell yeah. I mean, it's weird. I was just looking at all of us. Like, Rod, you're the only one who hasn't had a proper High Hash Rate episode. I guess you never will. Oh well.
That's disappointing. I invited myself on a few times and they never DM'd me back.
Those High Hash Rate guys, they really they really perfected the Bitcoin podcast idea of having one host who's really smart but is a real fucking dick, and the other host is like a really nice guy but an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like, and I mean, other podcasts
but I
have
don't
done
think
it.
Dan was an idiot at all.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Other podcasts have
Mike
kind of
was
followed
great.
that template. I mean, like you guys do it, Rock Paper Bitcoin. Like you guys follow that template pretty well. Other podcasts do it as well. You know, like
Boomer's ready, man.
It's
really
definitely
ready.
like something that works.